always used to lay you clean up the messes. Down on my knees, thought I couldn't stand up on my own. Turns out sometimes you're stronger alone.
Hey, Mike Shimwell here, host of the Shunned podcast. If you want to tell your story, buy a t-shirt, maybe some merch, maybe get some additional resources, you can do so at shunnedpodcast.com. If you want professional help to heal and recover from life in a cult so that you can figure out who you are and what you want out of this life, or maybe you just want to figure out where the patterns from the past might still be showing up in your life today, you can find help at exjwhelp.com. Again, that's exjwhelp.com. And every episode of the Shunned podcast has helpful links in the podcast and YouTube descriptions. So if you need something, you can always look there. And now let's meet our guest.
My name is Cherie. I'm 41 years old. I was one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and I am shunned.
All right, Cherie. So how'd you come to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses in the first place?
My mother converted when I was really young, and I was basically raised in that religion.
Okay. Do you know how old you were?
Yeah, so I have pictures of my first and only birthday party. When I was 1 year old, I had a Smurfette birthday cake. And after that, there were no more pictures. So my mother, I want to say she started studying in 1984, but she didn't get baptized until 87. It took her like 3 years of studying and some other traumatic events happening to her to make her finally get baptized. So I was 4, almost 5, when she got baptized in 87.
I have to say it's interesting that your first birthday party involved the Smurfs during a time where Jehovah's Witnesses were freaked out about the demonic nature of the Smurfs.
Yes, I still like the Smurfs. In fact, when my mom would go out in service on Saturdays and my dad was with us because he wasn't a witness, we would watch the Smurfs when she was gone. We wouldn't tell her, though. We never told her.
It's interesting. There's a lot of people that I've spoken to who had maybe a first birthday or a first Christmas or something like that, where their parent was in the or parents were in the transition of studying and learning, whatever the case may be. At that time, were you the only child, or did you have siblings?
No, I have 2 younger sisters. My middle sister is 17 months younger than me. So my mom was pregnant with her, I think, right a year or so before she really got serious. And then my baby sister is 3 years younger than me. So, mom had one on the hip, one in the belly, and one holding the hand. And then I had to hold the skirt because she held the hand and held the other kid. So I have memories of a convention where I'm holding her skirt and I got separated from her and got lost. And she was so upset about me getting lost that she spanked me for that. So I did have 2 younger sisters. Well, I still have them. One is living in another state. One lives in another city.
Okay. I was just asking because it's often a mom has maybe her first child, or it sounds like in your case, you were super young and she had one on the way. And, it's a very vulnerable time, and people are often parents want to provide stability or a moral code or whatever. And so sometimes people will find, or Jehovah's Witnesses just happen to find those people, or however it occurs. And then boom, they're kind of sucked in because, hey, this provides certain things, or it feels like it's going to provide a structure for my kids, and I want to give that to them.
Yeah. So in this case, when my mom was pregnant with my middle sister, she and my dad had just moved into the state and away from all of my mom's family, and my dad's parents lived there. So she didn't have any friends. She didn't have a job. She didn't have connections or family. And the witnesses knocked on her door, and she was polite to them, and they just kind of kept coming. And then she started studying with them, and she didn't take it seriously. She didn't go to meetings or anything. But then right before she had my middle sister, my mom's father died, and he was across the country, and she hadn't seen him, in a while, and she wasn't able to go when he was passing. It was he was dying of lung cancer, I think, and he was relatively young, but because of that tragic loss, they pounced with the resurrection hope, and she just grabbed it, and that was it. It still took her a little bit of time to finally get baptized, but that was what finally got her. And in fact, when the sister that was studying with her went to do the study that day, she couldn't make it, the sister that was studying with my mom. So she sent another pioneer sister to end the study because my mom wasn't making progress. And so my mom had lost her dad, and she asked that sister, like, this is what's happening. And the sister was like, I'm not ending your study for you. You're going to have to do that yourself. But because that other lady was there, she started asking questions about, the Bible's hope for the future, whatever, whatever. And then my mom was on hook, line, and sinker after that. And she took it seriously and then got baptized. So she was definitely vulnerable when they met her. But then, my mom's just being nice or whatever. But it reached a point where she was super weak and vulnerable and needed the community and the hope. And that's what they gave her. And she was really zealous my entire life, and not so much now. I don't know exactly, but from what she tells me, I don't think she's as zealous as she thinks she should be. But that's how she came in, and we were really young. My dad never took to it. He was always a smoker and didn't really want to give that up. And he never stopped her though, and supported her not working and going out in service all the time. Had 3 young girls, and you know, he worked and came home and just wasn't interested in becoming a witness. So he never did. He did study like one time, I think, just because the right brother came along and showed him some attention. I don't think my dad even knew he was studying. He came to a couple of meetings. He came to my first talk, and he went to one of my sister's first talks, I think, but that was about it. A couple memorials, but yeah. So that's how she came in, and so that was all we knew, us girls. Even though my dad wasn't, we had all of our extended family. None of them were in the religion, and I would say we were close to some of our cousins, but really not like we could have been, because there was always this expectation that they were going to be destroyed, right? So why would you want to be close to people like that? So I wish we would have been closer. We are now as adults, but back then it would have been nice to have a closer relationship with my family and kind of build the holidays and the memories that people get around those days. We just didn't. But I wouldn't say it was a bad childhood. There's certain things that happened, but overall, looking back as a kid, as an adult to my childhood, I feel like it was pretty good.
Okay. We'll get into that some. It's what an interesting thing to have to say. I didn't get in contact with my cousins, or I kept them at arm's length, or our family kept them at arm's length because, well, God's going to kill them at any point, right? Like Armageddon is coming. They're going to be fodder for that. And so why bother getting close to someone that then it's going to hurt when you lose them, which is just such a, like, normal average people don't have to think that way. They don't grow up in a world where doomsday is coming at any point, and so you limit your association with other people, or you might even see them as a threat to your spirituality, the purity of your own spirituality based on Jehovah's Witness teachings. And so it's just, I understand. I'm not close to any of my extended family because we're basically strangers and have been our whole lives. I because of the same types of things. You're just taught not to get close. Don't
Yeah.
attach.
Yeah. And I have memories of like elementary school, girl I was close to, but I always in the back of my mind was like, yeah, I can't really be her friend, but she's nice to me, and I was thinking about that on the way over here to record this. This girl in the back of my mind, she's going to be destroyed because she doesn't love Jehovah. But she agreed to trade pets with me. So I gave her my fish tank and all the stuff, and she gave me her guinea pig. It's weird how random things pop in your head sometimes, but it was in the back of my head. And, I was like 8, and that's not something that you should be telling your children when you should be protecting your children from certain aspects of the real world, even if, someone is really ill and they have the potential to die from whatever they're going through. You don't sit there and dump that on them to carry around this dread and worry in the back of their head. But that's how it is being a Jehovah's Witness. You can't
Yeah, and contrast that with
you
such a
can't love
pure
these
moment.
people. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Just a pure moment of I have a little friend and I'm trading pets with her. I mean, what's the beautiful, pure little thing that kids might do, right? And then contrast that with you're also holding these horrible, ugly stories in your head of death and destruction that kids really shouldn't be walking around in fear of.
Yeah.
Um, so you mentioned a second ago your childhood, so to speak. So um, being raised as a witness, let's talk about certain areas of that childhood, and let's start with a little bit of just how did being raised as one of Jehovah's Witnesses make you see the world? I mean, it kind of touches on what we were just referencing a little bit, but how did you see the world around you? Were you afraid of it? Did you have any biases against it based on the way you were being raised, or did you feel like you fit in?
Um, the fit in thing I didn't really worry about till, I was more in middle school, but I can remember, so my mom in 87 is when she got baptized, and that's the first year I started school. I was 4, turning 5. And my teacher, I just loved school, right? Well, I liked it for about 2 weeks. My mom said, she told me this when we're close to her, but I loved school for about 2 weeks. And I was like, okay, well, I've had enough of that. Do I have to keep doing this? And I did, turned out. But the teacher didn't like witnesses, and I had no idea. She didn't treat me any differently. But my mom told me that my mom would have to make different projects for me. If they're doing a Santa Claus coloring page, she would have to provide my mom would have to provide something for me to do. The teacher wouldn't make alternatives. And I didn't know that was even happening. So, I feel like I can understand the frustration for that teacher because she probably understood what Jehovah's Witnesses were, and wasn't going to make it easy for my mom. But I didn't know any different. And then, as I got older, so my mom was very, very spiritual, and she studied all the time. So I learned that it was really important to study, and I applied that to school as well. But I always kind of felt like I was in my own little protected bubble. And I knew that Armageddon was going to come before I had to go to middle school. Facts. Definitely. So I don't need to worry about that. Like, I was terrified of changing schools and going from the 4th to the 5th grade because there's a whole nother school. This school, they had an upstairs, they had a second floor. It was a bigger school. I was going to have multiple teachers and classes, and that really brought me a lot of anxiety. But I didn't worry about it too much because Armageddon was going to be here. And then, lo and behold, it did not happen. Didn't happen. So going through middle school, I was a very good kid. I never got into trouble. My sisters, we were all at the same school for like 1 year because of our age. We were close in age, but I just always had straight A's and did well. I worked in the office, like your typical, you know, above average grades, and I had to set an example. And my sisters were watching me and they all knew I was a witness, so I had to act a certain way and I had to make good grades and couldn't get in trouble. I couldn't like boys. So I kind of learned how to compartmentalize and pretend like I didn't have natural feelings or that I wasn't interested in certain things just because I didn't want people to think I was a bad witness. And then, going into high school, I kind of had a little glow up in 10th grade where I started looking prettier and got some more attention and still had really good grades. And, I fit in high school. I was kind of friends with everybody because I wasn't in any particular clique, just kind of got along with all of them. And I would tell them I was a witness and I would witness to people in school. Ended up converting one of my fellow students, which looking back, I hate that happened, but it did. And graduated with honors. But then it was like in high school, because you're such a good student, they do not understand why you're not interested in college. And when I tell you I was a good student, like 8th grade, I took that LEAP test, whatever the standardized test for the whole state, and I got a perfect score on the ELA and near perfect on the math. So I should have went to college. I would have qualified for free tuition. But I was like, Armageddon, there's no point. The end is coming. I do not need to do this. And so I didn't. And I really have some resentment there because I didn't do that and because it was never encouraged. And I really didn't want to like go be a doctor or anything. I wanted to be a teacher. That's the only thing I could ever remember wanting to be was a school teacher. And, that's not, I don't understand. Even now, I'm like, I don't understand why they don't kind of adjust their thinking on that. I know the critical thinking thing comes in. You can't have that. But anyway, my
Yeah, they don't want
counselors
you
were
to go
like,
to school and to learn about the entirety of the world that is outside of their small little cult purview. They need you to, they've got to keep you small, right? They don't
"Mhm,
want you to learn new things or be exposed to other people or whatever the case may be.
exactly. And I don't know. I took a couple of classes in what do you call it, a community college 2 years ago, and the two classes I took, I had to write papers. And I'm like, oh, okay, I get it now. Because you have to list your sources and you have to say who said this and where you got this information. And that always bothered me with the Watchtower. I would sit there and Google who said this, trying to find the quotes and stuff. Anyway, we'll get to that later, I'm sure. But yeah, so that was my school. I never got in trouble. I did drop out of choir because the teacher wouldn't let me just stand there and pretend to sing Christmas songs. So she encouraged me to drop out of choir, and I did, which
Well, honestly, I'm kind of
another
surprised
witness
that you would.
thing.
I would say I'm surprised that you would be allowed to participate and even mime singing that as a witness. That uh, people would
Yeah,
probably have a problem with that.
yeah. Well, a friend of mine was in choir. The guy that I grew up across the street from, they were witnesses, and I had a crush on him my whole life. But he was in choir, so I wanted to be in choir, and I really didn't have any background in music. So he I thought he was mouthing the Christmas songs, but he actually was singing them because he was mentally out most of his life anyway. But I was just like, well, if he can do it, I can do it. And but the teacher wouldn't allow it, and so they just were like, no. And I was like, well, I'm not gonna sing Christmas songs, because I don't want to offend Jehovah. And I dropped out, and I took Spanish or something else that I ended up dropping out of. But again, because I didn't need tops, I wasn't going to college, and then I probably could have still qualified for tops if I had taken Spanish too, and a couple of like the higher science and maths. But I didn't see the point of wasting my energy on classes that I didn't need because I wasn't going to go. So,
I think that's a great point. And sometimes we'll talk about how Jehovah's Witnesses maybe don't take care of their health at times because Armageddon is around the corner, and so they feel like it kind of lessens the importance of it. They just don't. If something comes up and they're afraid of it medically, then they'll just maybe ignore that thing and live in denial because the end's going to come. It doesn't matter. Why put myself through this? And educationally, why bother taking even AP courses in high school if that's an option or whatever the case may be? Why bother taking any kind of college preparatory anything because you're not going to college? So why really care about having an education? It's so sad that people are discouraged from learning things. That's awful and really shows the level of their control, how much they control what we do, what we think, what we're allowed access to.
yeah. And I don't understand how anyone could go through college and not wake up in the religion. I
But it
had a
happens.
friend. Oh, I know. I had a friend who went to school to be a school teacher. She went to LSU, and she's still deep in it. And I just don't understand how you can go through that awakening just to the you know educational world and not go,
Uh,
something's off here. But she did, and I'm
well,
sure there's lots of others that have done that, but I don't understand it.
well, that just
So,
shows that it's not a matter of intelligence. It's often a matter of emotion, and people are stuck in this thing for many reasons. It's not just, is this person able to think critically? Logic is part of it for sure, and being able to think critically can help us to leave, but it's the emotions that keep people stuck for the most part. And I mean, I know a professor from the University of Louisville who is one of the Jehovah's Witnesses today, who became one later in life at a nearby congregation. Smart guy, knows how to research things, knows how to find sources for things, as you were mentioning earlier. But yet here he is parroting the doctrine of Jehovah's Witnesses. I don't know what made him vulnerable. I don't know his story, but there's some reason that he's in there, and it's not because he's a dum dum. It's because he's stuck in some way, mentally and emotionally.
yeah, yeah, you're right. I just know for me, I couldn't.
For you, it was the logic and the thinking that helped you probably to see things. Um,
Yeah. Well, I had to go through some stuff, you
yeah.
know, and in order for me to start kicking in some of this reasoning skills, but because my life was traumatic here and there,
Mhm.
but when it all hit at once, and that's when it happened for me.
Yeah.
But the younger part, the middle and high school, I mentioned earlier the guy in choir. So his family, I lived on this street with one, two, four other witness families. I don't know why we all lived on this street, but um, one was like inactive and they had a bunch of boys, so we didn't hang out with them a whole lot. The ones across the street had two sons and three daughters, and they were all older than me except for their youngest daughter, and her and I were best friends. And we did everything together. Um, so I always had her, and then her and I don't remember what happened, but she wrote me a breakup letter. She's like, I can't be your best friend anymore. I've decided to be best friends with my middle sister. And I was like, what? Okay, so we're not friends. So I've been at that point, even in the congregation, I didn't really have any friends anymore. So I was by myself a lot. And, um, whenever you have two sisters, there's always an odd one out because they two will gang up on the other one. And so, because I was the older one, I tended to kind of fly solo, and it was kind of lonely, to not to be able to, like, my school friends, not get close to them because of the thinking of them not loving Jehovah, so I can't love them. And then this one friend I had dumping me, and it really broke my heart for her to do that to me. And I probably still have that letter somewhere because I keep stuff like that. But yeah, she broke up with me, and then we weren't friends, and I didn't have anybody else. So kind of that sucked. I don't remember where I was going with that, but I just another thing of not having enough of my support of my own age group. And then I start kind of clinging to older people. And while that can be healthy, it can also be unhealthy because you set expectations for yourself to be more mature and to have conversations like they have, and that's not appropriate for young people all the time. You really need people and friends your own age. And I find a few people that I've listened to of their story, that tends to happen to them. Like it's a young person like myself who clings to this single 40-year-old weird sister who's pioneering. And so then you're pioneering, and in high school, this sister, and I'm speaking the truth here. This sister was like 40, 42, single. She was married in the past. I'm pretty sure uh, she probably was single for a reason, in the organization. But she latched on to me and I to her, and we were like best friends. And I'm, 17, 16, 17, 18. I'm in high school and pioneering and going out after like late night witnessing and sleeping at her house and going to Texas with her to visit her friends over there. And now, as a 41-year-old woman, I look at that and I go, that is fucking weird. That's weird. Like, she's my mom's age and she's my best friend. That's weird, right?
It is. You
No.
said you said a magic phrase. You said latched on. And Jehovah's Witness relationships are often very possessive, and they often occur very quickly. It's like you have all these people who are desperate for attention and friendship, and everyone is lonely, and you finally find somebody that you click with on any level, and it's like, it's almost like I need to consume that person. That person is mine now.
Mhm.
And we are going to be not just friends, but probably enmeshed in some unhealthy ways. And it is really not the stuff of healthy friendships. It's often the stuff of codependency and trauma bonding at times, depending on how the situation is. There's a lot of things there. And it's this is really unfortunate, and does, like you said, as a 40-year-old today, you look at it. I mean, I don't know, do you have a lot of 17-year-old whatever, like, besties that you, like, go do stuff with all the time? Like that, it's atypical for sure. Not that people can't be friends, but at that level, it is atypical. And it's just a reflection of the way Jehovah's Witnesses attach. It's not real attachment. It's this kind of possessive and controlling a lot of times.
Yeah. And to be able to go to her house and hang out there, she gave me a lot more freedom than my mom did. And so I was able to do things that I wasn't allowed otherwise. And yeah, even after she had moved away and I was married, I went to visit. She's bipolar, and I don't know what other mental health issues she has because I was too young to recognize that then. When I went to visit her later, she slapped me across my face, and I don't know, I don't even remember why. But that's just one of those, like, because it was so shocking, I was like, what the fuck? But yeah, she had a lot of younger friends, but for me specifically, I was at her house all the time. And then when I started dating who I would in the future marry, she kind of pushed that too. Like she would let us hang out at her house. We were going out in service together and she knew we liked each other. And I don't know, it's weird. And I find 20-year-olds, most of them kind of annoying, like I don't think that I would hang out with people that age. My daughter is almost 14. So I see a lot of me in her and I'm like, I don't know why. I mean, I hang out with my daughter because she's my daughter and I love her and she's beautiful, but I can't freaking hear her half the time. Like teenagers, 20-year-olds, like it just was odd, you know.
Well, think about
But
it
yeah,
too. If you have no self-worth or self-esteem, which most people don't have a lot in the organization, I think a lot of people hang out with people who are outside of their peer group, younger people maybe because they feel like those younger people might look up to them and they might feel important in that way. Like, I'm
yeah,
40, I've got freedom and experience and stuff that you don't have as a young person. And so maybe I actually feel good about where I am in life or who I am in life. And so I have a lot of younger friends because I can feel okay. Whereas maybe I feel behind my natural peers.
yeah, I can see that. And I also supported
It just
her.
breeds a lot of dysfunction.
Yeah, it's very dysfunctional, and maybe for her, is somebody that wanted to go out late night witnessing, and I was, hey, yeah, let's go. We're going out from 6 to almost 10 o'clock at night, and she needed her time, right? So these young people love to do that because it was more of a social engagement. We would drive around and get McDonald's or whatever, and stop at a parking lot or a laundromat and drop a magazine every once in a while, and hey, we got 4 hours. We're pioneering. We're special, and yeah, that could have been part of it, but so I have memories of that, and you know, the typical in school. Didn't get to go to the pep rally. I've never been to a pep rally, and my daughter, she's playing games in pep rallies, and I'm like, man, that looks like so much fun. She it's good to see her do normal things, but even I'm in Louisiana, so it's carnival season and king cakes. It's a thing here. And if somebody brought a king cake to school and I ate some of it, I was praying to Jehovah that I did not get the baby. Because if you get the baby and the king cake, you have to bring the next king cake. And I was like, if my mom finds out that I had king cake, oh my God, I would have been in so much trouble. So I would sneak the king cake and I never got the baby. Um, Oddly enough, I got a king cake recently and the first piece I got the baby. And I was like, well, I'm good now because I'll buy the next one. That's fine. But so
It's
that and
just an
the
excuse for more cake.
yeah, people now, this time of year, people all over the country, right, are trying to lose weight. It's king cake season, so we ain't trying right now, but after probably February 14th, we might get into it. But so I didn't have the cupcakes or the birthday parties, and I just missed out on a lot of fun and feeling dread and guilt if I even wanted to participate in it. When the teacher comes by with the cupcakes and there's no candle on your cupcake, you're not singing happy birthday with everyone else. You might feel like you could have the cupcake, but then when you do, you feel bad about it, even as a 7-year-old, which is really shitty. It's really
Yeah,
shitty.
7-year-olds shouldn't have to feel bad for having a cupcake along with other 7-year-olds who are also having cupcakes just because it's a birthday. That's again, it's way too much on kids. Um, how did you feel at the Kingdom Hall? Did you when at the meetings and such, did you feel like you fit in there or like were I know your dad didn't participate, but were you and your sisters and your mom, like, were you all a family that was at every meeting? Were you all regular out in service? Were you all super engrossed in this?
Definitely. We sat on the front row, second row, the same row every meeting. And it was my mom and her three little chickies. She answered a lot. She studied a lot. She didn't really study with us. She tried when we were older to do the family study, and it didn't work out. It would just drag on, and she ended up being pissed off by the time an hour hit. But yeah, we were out in service all the time. My mom, she would go out on Saturdays and Wednesdays. And you would catch her often on a Saturday afternoon laying across her bed with her watchtower and just highlighting and underlining different colors and writing in the margins. And she would pull out her bound volumes and do research and study. So we were pretty active. The occasional Saturday morning when we got to skip service, my dad was home. My dad, he'd say, "Come on, Goose, let's go ride." And we would just drive around town. He had a couple friends in town. He'd stop at the gas station, get himself a beer, and then drive to his friend's house, and we hang out over there. And then on the way home, we stop again. So like, to me, that was a fun Saturday when my dad was like, "You're coming with me, and we're just going to go visit and ride." Saturday mornings when we were going out in service, it was like, oh, we got to hurry up. We got to get ready. We were always late. 3 little kids. I don't know how my mom did it. But we weren't very like invited to a lot of things gathering wise because my dad wasn't in the organization. So we missed out a lot on that kind of stuff. And we also didn't have money. So I think our congregation was a lot of them are cliquey, but these were super cliquey. And there was a certain group of sisters that if it was them 4 and my mom and us 3, and then across the street, the neighbors that we were close to, they had a son that had some learning disabilities. And I don't know if he's really diagnosed with anything, but socially, I think the cord was wrapped around his neck when he was born. So he's a little slow. We'll say that. I don't know if that's politically correct, and we adored him, and he would ride with us all the time because his family was kind of hit and miss, but he always made the meeting. So it was my mom, us 3, and him. And if we showed up at the Kingdom Hall and it was those 4 sisters and my mom, us girls, and that guy, they would always put us together. And one summer, we all pioneered, and this is back when it was like 60 hours, and it was hot in Louisiana. It's like 100 degrees here. And we're in this big car. And I told my mom, I said, "Mama, if they put him with us again and it's just us, I want you to take me home." Because they would all raise their hands. Oh, we have plans with each other. And so we would be off, and my mom's burning her gas every time. Basically, we're just doing door to door all freaking day because we don't have return visits. This guy doesn't have, he couldn't even read. He still can't read. Sweet as can be. Do anything for him still to this day.
Well, yeah, but they also just stuck your mom with a bunch of kids. There's no, instead of saying, "Hey, let's put an adult in there and maybe split the kids up, and let's all help out." There's no helping out. They didn't want to mess with you guys. That's what it is. They don't want to take care of kids or help.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And like I said, we didn't have money. We grew up in a house that didn't have air conditioning. My dad was inconsistent with income, and my mom was a stay-at-home mom for a long, long time. And there was many times where she went to the brothers and she's like, "He's not providing for his household. This is scriptural reason." And they're like, "No." They told her no. And she told him one time, "I'm pretty sure if every one of y'all were following what you teach, you'd all be living in campers and pioneering somewhere in rural territory." And they're just like, but these elders were engineers and working in chemical plants and making 6 figures. And here we are trying to live on like $19,000 a year and no air conditioning. But you let my mom drive in service every time to take her kids. And she was still faithful because she really did it for Jehovah. And she had her routine and did her best to raise all of us to be just like her. Just like her, little mini mama. And yeah, so that was hard at times, just feeling like nobody wanted to be with us, and nobody wanted to invest in us and spend time with us. And these particular sisters had grown children, so they didn't want to have nothing to do with us. We were just in the way and annoying and um, just kind of unkind, really.
Yeah, you made it feel like a problem, a burden, and not a person. They could have really participated in. Yeah, it's I know people who go to churches today. Uh, just one person I'm thinking of, and in their church they do different community outreach programs, and they help the homeless, and they have programs to help families who are struggling with groceries and such. And you don't even have to be a member of the church. They just have like these things. And then here
Yeah,
Jehovah's Witnesses are claiming to be the most loving people on earth. And not only do they not help the general public at all, but even inside their congregations, I'm not saying that there's never been a helpful person, and of course there's been some cool stories of people helping at times, but there's a lot of situations like what you're talking about right here, where you have a divided household, you
yeah,
single parent Jehovah's Witness, who's bringing her kids faithfully, who's really trying to do the right thing according to them, and instead of rising up and helping that and include being inclusive, they really just push those people away and are like, "Oh no, I don't want to fool with you. I don't want to get my hands dirty or put more effort into you and your kids." And that's really a shame. I mean, I'm okay with it if in the end it helps people to leave someday, but it creates an unpleasant circumstance at that time.
yeah. There was another sister in our congregation who also had 3 kids that were older than we were, but her husband was a witness and would not work. And I'm sure it was the same thing with them. The elders encouraging her to, wait on Jehovah and all that bullshit. And there were days when my mom brought her groceries because they literally had nothing to eat. My mom would pick her and her kids up for book study, and we would pile 8 of us in a 6-passenger car to go to book study, where those people, their house was nice. We're here for book study, and they have air conditioning, and they have like they have carpet, and our house was never finished. Just practical things that the brothers and the elder body could have done to help my mom, even though my dad, she had a husband, they did not do. In fact, the elders would come to our house with their beat up cars because my dad was a mechanic. And they would ask my dad to fix their cars, and they would not pay him. And he would do it, and I don't know if he expected them to pay, but they didn't offer. They just took. And, just pat my mom on the back and pray and wish you well and good luck to you. Oh,
Yeah, I know all of that stuff is true. I have seen that with my own eyes. It was my family too. We were the poor ones, and yeah, we were the ones who could barely afford gas to get to the meetings, but were asked to go pick up sister so and so and brother so and take them to the meeting. And we already had a car full, and we had no air conditioning, and we had no money, and yet it was my family doing that, not these wealthier brothers and sisters who had resources and could have done that. And nobody ever provided gas money or any assistance. No, it's there's a
mm-mm,
lot of users in the organization.
absolutely. Yeah. No, there's
So
no practical help.
no, no. Did you yourself identify with, or like, did you enjoy any of the witness activities? Did you enjoy going to meetings or going out in service or giving talks at different times? Like, was there anything that you ever connected to there?
So I did enjoy going to McDonald's for break.
Break, yeah.
And I always kind of felt like it was exciting to get invited into somebody's house when we were in service, because that didn't happen very often. And I felt like we had success if they were nice and invited us in. So that was to me kind of cool. After not the book study, but the midweek meeting, we almost always went to Sonic or McDonald's. And so I don't really remember a lot about the meetings, but I remember the hanging out after at McDonald's and everybody squeezing into the booth and getting our little dollar ice cream. Well, it might have been cheaper back then. And the ice cream machine probably worked back then too. So those were cool memories. I was very much into, well, not maybe until I was in high school. I don't remember participating a whole lot. I did join the school when I was probably 10 or 11, and I always gave my talks. And then I studied on my own. I always, yeah, especially for book study. I remember we went through the knowledge book, and I think I was like 13. And because we went through the knowledge book at book study, my mom felt like I was qualified to get baptized because she never studied with me. I studied, the book study was my Bible study. And so when we finished that book, I think I was heading toward baptism at that point. But I mean, I enjoyed, I guess we got out of the house and it was something that we could count on doing and being somewhere. The assemblies were fun. I liked that because we got the bagels and cream cheese.
I'm
And the
noticing
cool,
all of your fun is food related.
look, I just went on a work trip, and every time my boss was like, "Do y'all want to eat or do you want to head back?" And I was like, "Eat." Cherie likes to eat. I have no shame in that. I really like to eat. Um, I have my metabolism works well, and I enjoy food. But yeah, that was mostly what I liked about JW life back then was the social. And my mom had a couple friends that also, I mentioned that one sister, and then she had another sister that was, they were better off than we were, but for some reason my mom always paid for her when we went places. My mom had a lot of credit card debt, and the sister she used my mom a lot. She had like one daughter that we were friends with. So they were fun, and she always made us laugh. So I guess because we didn't hang out with anybody else really, like we didn't have family or cousins, that at least we had these people and we could have fun with them, and it was okay to have fun with them. So I did. Yeah, I had some good times.
Yeah, it's often the social, the communal aspects of it where you can find it, or just like having those little touch points where you're going to see people on, I don't know what days your meetings were, but maybe it was like Tuesday, Thursday, Sunday, whatever, at different points. And you knew you were going to see certain people. And sometimes that could be something to look forward to. Sometimes it was something to dread, depending on the person or the situation. But it was nice to at least have those touch points at different times. And there was the social aspect. Part of the reason I also got a kick out of just you talking about, Sonic or McDonald's or whatever, the food aspect was just that it's really, I think that for a lot of us, the times that we enjoyed the most had nothing to do with meetings
Yeah.
or things like that. It was just the human experiences, which we could have had all along without all that other mess. We didn't need any of the other stuff to just be good people and hang out.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's what I do now.
Right, right.
We just have social things and God's not involved. It's pretty nice.
Yeah. Um, so your family, you've touched on it a little bit, but just the fact that you had this, as witnesses would see it, a divided household, your dad was not one of Jehovah's Witnesses. How did, I don't know, you said that he was rather supportive of your mom and her efforts, as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. Um, I don't know, did you all also, like, when you went with him riding or whatever, or whatever the case may be, I guess, like, was that reciprocated? Was everybody kind of pulled toward everybody else's interests? Because sometimes it's hard for Jehovah's Witnesses to accept the interests of others. you know, if your dad wanted to take you out riding, that means you're not going out in service, and that's the paramount thing. Like, did the truth, as they would call it, did it cause any divisions in your home at all? Or was everybody pretty understanding and helping each other to enjoy wherever they were at in life?
Um, well, when I say my dad was supportive, I don't mean like he was like, go to the meetings or anything like that. He was very much indifferent. He just worked. And so he financially supported her and he never stopped her. But I'm pretty sure he was embarrassed that she went door to door and would not have wanted her to knock on a coworker's door. Um, there were a few times where when we did do something of that my dad invited us to do, it turned out to be like a New Year's Eve party. So um, one of his friends was a police officer and they had a really nice house, and he was very that friend of my dad's was very much involved with the community and had lots of friends, and they would have parties, and he would tell my mom it's just a get together. So we would go, and this one time have vivid memories of it being New Year's Eve party. And so it's almost midnight. My mom's going, we have to leave. We can't be here. This is, we don't celebrate this and da da da. And we stayed because my dad was like, no, we're here. We're not leaving because this is what they do. And I guess he didn't know that it was a big deal because I don't think he would have done that intentionally, but he felt like it would have been rude to leave. So we stayed and they did the countdown. And that was like I remember that. And I don't remember a lot of other things from my childhood. So it was very rare for my dad to take us somewhere and have a social thing we were going to. But when we did, it was like New Year's Eve party. It was a birthday party one time. And I went, and then after I was like, oh, that wasn't even a big deal. Like why they make such a big deal out of this? It was just like any other gathering that I would have went to as a witness, except there was cake and a countdown, fireworks. Um, I think if my dad had known the consequences of baptism and future shunning, I feel like definitely he would have stopped us from being baptized. I think he would have stopped my mom from pursuing that life course because he never supported shunning or disrespect of basic human rights for other people. So, but he never stopped her. He knew she was going to go out in service. He knew she was going to go to the meetings. She had dinner ready. He had clean clothes. They kind of, they were mutually understanding of each other's choices. Um, I spent more time with my dad than anybody else in the house did because I don't know. I guess I was just closer to him. He really liked to hunt. And so we went hunting every year. That's something that we did almost every December. He would go to his mom's in Mississippi and I would go. Not every time, but I would. And it was also a fun time when I didn't go with him because we had the house and we'd have people over, and we didn't really do that a lot when my dad was around just because he didn't like a lot of people to be over. So I would say that there was it wasn't necessarily supportive of each other, but an understanding that that's just how it was. And later we go through some disfellowshippings and stuff, and my dad was like, you don't treat them like that. You don't shun people. I don't care who they are or what they did. And I just was like, okay, Dad, you just don't understand, because you're not a witness.
Who's the one being loving there? And
Yeah.
uh it is interesting to see the contrast, and yeah, he probably isn't going to understand a new year. Like, what in the world is wrong with celebrating the new year? That's a difficult thing, for witnesses to really explain anyway. What is so bad or wrong about that? What is biblically wrong with celebrating the new year? Um, and it's not something that someone who's not one of Jehovah's Witnesses is really probably going to get. he was just excited to take his family probably to this party. And
Mhm.
I'm glad that at least it sounds like you didn't walk away feeling super guilty for being there. Or maybe you were as well, but it sounds like you at least allowed yourself to see what was just a party. There wasn't anything bad that happened.
Yeah, and my dad always seemed really proud to take us anywhere. Like,
Yeah.
he really loved my mother and was obsessed with her, and so kinda like whatever she wanted is he was not even if he wasn't okay with it, he was gonna go along with it, and he was proud of us and happy to bring us places, whereas my mom, I kinda felt like there was somewhat of a disappointment related to my dad because he wasn't a witness, because he didn't support her and didn't go to the meetings with her, and, like, her expectations and hopes and wishes for him were always greater than what he could deliver because of, the indoctrination that she's surrounded with, and these brothers that Jehovah must be blessing because their families are doing better than ours and that kind of thing. So, but my dad was raised just very, very simply. So even going back to pre-witness era for my mom, she was raised in more of a well-to-do family with a nice brick home on Main Street, and my dad was raised out in the woods, probably with no running water and just real kind of poor. So the way they ended up in marriage was somewhere in the middle of both of those things. But my mom always wanted more. And I think even if she hadn't become a witness, she probably still would have expected more, but maybe she would have invested more into herself and having her be the person that kind of stepped them up into that place. But because she became a witness, she invested herself into that instead. And so she put all of her energy into that, and it didn't benefit them whatsoever. It just probably pushed them apart more than anything else.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't. That's Jehovah's Witnesses destroy families, and
Yes.
so unfortunately, and it's just pretty much everybody who has witnesses in their family, there's going to be a rift, a division somewhere, and it's just very unfortunate. Um, you're either in or you're out of their club.
Mhm.
That's the way they see the world. So, well, so as you uh, got older, you said that so you got baptized. How old were you when you got baptized?
I was 14 for like 2 whole months. I had just turned 14 when I got baptized, and I will tell you, I was not ready. I heard a talk one day. The presiding overseer gave the talk at the Kingdom Hall, and for some reason, I just felt like my heart was wide open that day, and I needed to hear that, and why aren't I baptized? And I should be baptized. So right after that meeting, I went and told that brother, "I wanna get baptized." And he said, "Well, have you dedicated yourself to Jehovah in prayer?" And I said, "Yes," but I had no idea what that meant. So I went right to the bathroom of the Kingdom Hall. I'm telling you, he was at the information board. Yes, I did. I went right into that bathroom stall and I said a prayer to Jehovah. I dedicate myself to you, Jehovah, and I'm so sorry that I just lied. And then, you know, what the fuck? And that's what I did. And so that shows you right there. I had no idea what I was doing, but
None
I
of us
just felt,
did. None of us had ever
yeah.
dedicated ourselves. We were all, as kids, asked that question. And it was like, what? What do you mean? What's that? What does that even? What does dedicating yourself to Jehovah in prayer even mean? So, like you, we all just went, maybe not in the bathroom, like the bathroom dedication. Uh,
I had to ask for forgiveness as quickly as possible so that
yes,
I truly was ready to do it. But
yes. Hey, quick announcement here. Uh, some of you don't know, but I have a project dedicated to bringing in career and small business help into our community of survivors. If you'd like to learn more, possibly participate, go to theuprisingproject.com. It's linked in the description here, and read the page about our mission and also the page to join so that you can see the benefits. I'm bringing in resources and support and you can be a part of lifting others up and finding help for yourself as well. So I hope to see you join in as we all rise up from the ashes of these groups that held us back.
Yeah, so I got baptized at the next circuit assembly, which was held at um, the LSU Pete Maravich Center. And, you know, no one told me, little 14-year-old me, that I should probably put my swimming suit on underneath my dress. So I didn't. And I'm in there in this room with all these grown women changing into a swimming suit with no privacy, which I was super uncomfortable with. No one told little 14-year-old Cherie that she should wear shorts. So I just wore a long t-shirt. And then I'm standing, and it was December. So I'm standing in the line, nervous and cold, with my towel and my real thick bangs I had at the time because, I was 14, I was awkward. And I'm shivering and I'm praying to God that that water is not cold because I might just pass out. And I get to my turn in line, and the brother says, "Have you ever been baptized before?" And I was like, "No." I still to this day don't know if he was being serious or if he was playing with me, but my knees were knocking. And I said, I looked at my mom because she was in the audience, like, no, because I hadn't. I didn't think I had, but maybe I should have asked my mom if I had been baptized before. I don't know. Um. Anyway, so then I got in, and the water was warm, and they got me on the first dunk. And then after, we went out to eat, and the sister that studied with my mom got me a really pretty emerald ring as a gift, baptism gift, which I still have and still fits me to this day. And I still wear occasionally. And, I celebrated for a while. And then I wanted to auxiliary immediately. So I did. I think I had to wait a month or something, but I did that. And I did that very regularly. And then, like, I think the next assembly, my best friend and my sister got baptized. And then, like, 3 or 4 others got baptized the next assembly. So then, like, my light was out after that. Nobody cared that I got baptized. And I was just regular again. But
Oh,
yeah, I didn't feel like any type of light or Holy Spirit or anything.
yeah, but you did say the way you said that, my light went out, so I wasn't special anymore because these other
Yeah.
people were getting baptized. Getting baptized as a kid, as a Jehovah's Witness, is like the only time that you ever get to feel special or you ever get to be praised by the people who are supposed to love you. And
Yeah.
you had your little moment in the sunshine, your 15 minutes, but it went really quickly. And then those things don't really just come back, do they? You lose
Yeah.
that attention, then you try to chase it by pioneering, like you were talking about, being a 14-year-old girl dedicating, I don't know what it was back then. Was it 60 hours a month
Hmm. Yeah.
to the public ministry, knocking on
60,
doors?
60 or 70. No, it might have been
Yeah,
because a
might have been
regular was 90
yeah, it was
back
usually
then.
60 for auxiliary, 90 for regular back then. Um,
Yeah.
that's a lot for
Yes.
a kid to be putting out there.
Yeah.
You're
Well,
giving
you
60 hours a month to it.
any chance you get to shine, because you don't get celebrated for your birthday, you don't get celebrated for Christmas. You make good grades, but that's expected of you, so that's not celebrated. And I spent my whole life. My middle sister was always, people were always saying she's so much, she's so pretty. Oh, look at her pretty blue eyes. And I would say, well, what about me, mama? Because I have blue eyes, but they just thought she was the most beautiful little thing. And I'm over here just feeling like, seconds, even though I was the oldest. So yeah, when I got baptized, I was like, hell yeah, this is freaking, and I was the only one in my congregation that got baptized that day. So like I didn't have to share that with anybody else. It was my day, my meal. And then there they are, like 7 of them getting baptized at once. And I'm like, well, there goes that. Congratulations. Everybody's baptized now. But I did pioneer a lot after that, and tried to, I didn't necessarily do it for the glory and all that, but it didn't hurt to have my name read off the stage and people to clap because I was putting in extra effort. And that was a lot of effort, in your summers. and it's hot and you're out there with just your sisters and your mama and the one guy, you know, you do want somebody to praise you and tell you that you're special and you're doing a good job. And that's, it is some of the reason why people do that. But it was nice,
Yeah. You take what you can get, right?
Mhm,
So,
for sure.
was there anything? So before I ask, I was going to ask you how life progressed as you went into your, maybe your late teenage years. Were there any seminal moments? But was there anything that we've missed that happened growing up that you wanted to make sure we touched on?
Um, no, I don't. I think we talked about most of it. It was nothing super outstanding. A lot of other stuff happened as I got later into my teens that we could talk about
Okay. So
if you want.
how did life go as you went into your later teenage years? I mean, that's a big time for anybody anyway, but what was going on in your
Yeah.
world?
So when I was 16, I met my future husband. And he was 4 years older than me. He was from another city, like 2 hours away, and an elder from his hall moved to my town and my congregation. And then he moved in with that brother to go to school. He was converted into the religion. My future husband was converted at the age of 19, 20. He was a big troublemaker, got expelled. He didn't graduate till he was 20 because of all the trouble he was in. And then he became a witness and changed his whole life. So I met him at a party. We had mutual friends out there in that city. And so I met him the first time there and just had the hugest crush on him. And I'm 16. So he doesn't, I mean, I'm sure he thought I was pretty or whatever, but no big deal. She's just a kid. Well, then when he moved into my congregation, we started talking to each other a lot more, um, pioneering. We're in the car together a lot, and really developed strong feelings for each other and kind of liked each other for a while before we started technically dating. And we started kind of sneaking around, with each other when I was 17 and started dating when I was 18. And I say that by meaning that the elders knew we were dating at that point. So 18, he's teaching me stuff sexually that, I never knew. My mom didn't talk to me about any of this stuff. And, looking back now as an adult and knowing what is appropriate and what's not appropriate for kids my age back then, and maybe his experience level versus mine, if I found out my daughter was dating someone like that, I would move away and take her with me. Like, my mom was super trusting of that relationship because he was, living with this elder. He was a minister. This guy was a ministerial servant. He was pioneering. He was going to school part time. Like he had all the credentials, right? But what she failed to remember and to put into perspective was that he was not raised a witness and he had a lot more experience level than I did. And you could probably even call it grooming. I won't get into a lot of details about it, but it was just not healthy for me. And it put me in this mindset of, well, now I have to marry this person. Whereas if we weren't witnesses, I would have dated him for a couple years and realized that he is not husband material and moved on with my life. But that's not what happened. I got sucked into wrongdoing and shame and felt pressure to move on. And all I could think was, we have to get married because we're doing all this stuff. But if we get married, it's going to make it void. Like, it's not going to matter anymore. I never have to tell anybody about this. And I don't think he ever really wanted to get married, but he was pressured as well by the elder body. We both were. We were officially dating for 8 months before they started asking him, when are y'all getting married? And it's like, we haven't even been dating a year. So at 8 months, they pulled us into the back. I am 18, no, I'm 19 years old at this point. Whatever. I was 18 or 19. We're being pulled into the back room to talk to two elders about why we're not engaged. And I just don't understand this looking back now, but they were trying to prevent us from getting into trouble, but they didn't know we was already doing stuff. So we ended up getting engaged. We got married. I was barely 20 years old. I was 20 for 10 days when we got married, and he was almost 24. So, you know, I looking back now, he wasn't ready. He had his own demons that he was trying to bury with this new um, environment, the new culture he was in. He had moved away from a very toxic life, but he never dealt with it. He never had therapy or talked about it to anyone. He just replaced it with the truth, right? And didn't I don't think he even fully was all in mentally. He just knew it was healthier than what he was doing before. And so he sucked me into, his problems. And even then, I didn't realize how unhealthy he was. I just felt like I could fix it and us getting married would fix it. And we would have this happily ever after because we were serving Jehovah and he was a servant, and I was pioneering and I had these goals and stuff. I just was so dumb. I was just
Well,
so dumb because I didn't know any better.
well, yeah, you were ignorant. You were 18 or what? I mean, like how are you supposed to know better? And if no one teaches you, and you had been if you want to use the term grooming, you had been groomed your whole life to be a submissive
Right.
woman, as Jehovah's Witnesses teach these young girls to be. And so then how are you ever going to speak up or have a voice or say if you don't like something? Or, I mean, consent in all things, right? Like, there's no consent as Jehovah's Witnesses in anything. Everything is just expected. And it's just like, no one has a voice. No one knows how to self advocate. It's really a bad situation that creates a lot of unhealthy relationships.
Yeah. And it was definitely unhealthy because, even after we were married, things came out that I didn't know about. And um, moving in together was like, I think people should live together before they get married. And I don't necessarily even care about being married anymore. I don't think that that's necessary either. But if you are going to, you should definitely live with that person because you see things and you see parts of them and they see parts of you that maybe they wouldn't like, that they're on their best behavior or otherwise. And, that submissive woman thing, I was all about that. I had a key to his apartment. I would go wash his clothes. I would clean the kitchen, change the bed, do stuff like that while he was working before we were even married. And that set expectations later that I was just going to always do that. And I did. I always did that. I always had to do that because nobody else did it. But so we got married in 2002, November 2002, and I had just graduated high school in May of 2001. So I was very young, had no idea what I was going to do for work, was kind of job hopping a little bit. And he had been at the same place since a year before we got married. And he still works there now. But with typical marriage, husband wife rules, he always provided for us. And we moved, we always upgraded as we moved. And in 2003, my mom started having an affair with who is now my stepdad. And so my mom and dad broke up, and my dad's mental health crashed. And I, being his closest and oldest daughter, had to take care of him. My dad was 40 something, probably a little bit older than I am now when this happened. And so we moved closer to home. always went to the same congregation, but moved closer to where my dad was. And I parented him through this. Whereas my mom was doing better for herself now with this guy she was with. He's a witness, you know, she left my dad for another witness, and he was financially well off, took care of my mom. She wouldn't have to worry about anything ever again financially. He was much older than her. And my dad's just fallen apart, you know, and my mom shows up at my apartment with this man holding hands, and that she's still living with my dad. I'm like, what the fuck? Did you see that? Mom is holding hands with him. They come to my house on a Sunday after the meeting, and I'm like, I was, it was like, I was so shocked about what was happening that she was doing this in public. And then, you know, they end up having their judicial meeting. They got disfellowshipped. My mom was devastated, but they told my mom straight up, if you leave Buddy, my dad, then you are going to be disfellowshipped. We don't care if you go off with him, him or not, who's now my stepdad. We don't care if you end up with him or not. If you leave Buddy, you are disfellowshipped. She said, well, I can't go back to him. And I just can't. And she had her reasons, right? She could have left my dad. She didn't need anybody's permission to do that. But that was their, you know, that was what they said. They called it. They said, if you do this, then that's why you're getting disfellowshipped. So she ended up getting disfellowshipped, and then he got disfellowshipped, and he had been an elder, so he knew what was going to happen. They kept my mom out for 2.5 years. She made every single meeting. She wrote 3 or 4 letters. My stepdad was out for 3 years. So I'm a newlywed. My mom gets disfellowshipped. And I'm talking about, we got married in November. In March, my mom was disfellowshipped. And my husband was a ministerial servant. So Cherie was not allowed to spend time with her mom or talk to her mom or do anything with her mom. And I was devastated. And my dad told me, I don't care what your mom did. She's your mother. You do not shun her. And I didn't. I did pull back, and I tried not to be seen with her in public, but I would go to her house. I would call her. I would go work out with her. We went to the same gym, not on accident. And, you know, we would go into the stretch room and stay in there for longer than we were working out. Went out to eat, you know, I went just stuff you weren't supposed to do. And my husband told me, if I lose my privileges because you're sitting with your mom, that's going to be a real big problem. He said, if I ever lose my privileges,
he's saying if he loses his privileges of being a ministerial servant, I guess at the time. Oh, okay. Wow.
Okay. So perspective. My husband and I were doing wrongdoing for a whole year before we were married, right? He's got his demons, but he tells me, if you are seen with your mom and I lose my privileges of being a servant because of you, that's going to be a problem. He said, I'm going to lose my privilege. If I'm going to lose them, it's going to be because of something I did. Like, it can't be because of me. And I'm just wanting to see my mom. I'm a newly married young girl whose dad is falling apart and whose mom is moving into a new chapter of her life. Whether I agree with it or not, she's still my mom. And I was just torn. So I did sneak around to see my mom. It was like I was sneaking around with him. Now I'm sneaking around with my mom just to have somewhat of a relationship.
Wow.
It's crazy.
It is. And isn't it? It's just interesting how Jehovah's Witnesses can compartmentalize things, and you know, it was okay for me to sneak around and to do things, and but now it's not okay for you to sneak around and to do things. There's so much hypocrisy in the way they treat one another, and it's all because all of them are really in service to this machine that's all about appearance over substance.
appearance. Yeah.
It's all
So
about appearances. It's incredibly narcissistic, the machine
he
is.
was very worried about other people's perception of us.
Oh, yes.
And he was always really, really private, didn't want anybody to know anything about us, finances or anything. So, so my mom and him, the guy she left my dad for, moved in together immediately. My mom never, she didn't really have a job. She didn't have a reliable vehicle. And here is this man rescuing and taking, sweeping her off her feet. So they moved in together and they lived together while she was still married to my father. And they lived together from March to December, unmarried. And they made every single meeting. And when I tell you they made every single meeting, they sat on the front row at the Kingdom Hall and people knew they were living together. And I think that's why they were disfellowshipped for so long, because there was no shame involved for them.
Yeah, you're
My
not supposed to
mom,
sit on the front row.
no, you're not. You're not supposed to sit on the front row. You're supposed to be ashamed. If it were me, I would have never went to the Kingdom Hall until we were married, if that's the life I wanted. But and I've read emails between her. My dad had emails between her and her lover, and they are literally talking about how they're going to rebuild their relationship with Jehovah after they're going to have to get disfellowshipped. They're going to have to get married. They're going to have to rebuild their relationship with Jehovah, and all the guilt that they're feeling. I mean, people have affairs. It's a part of life. It's a part of relationship. It happens. It's a human thing. But here they are with this whole other element where it's bad enough to go through an affair, but to lose your children and your whole support system, and everybody knows what you did and all the shame they look at you with, to put yourself back into that Kingdom Hall with those people that are judging you as if you're not feeling guilty enough for what you've done. Like, that takes some guts for them to go to the Kingdom Hall and be like, well, we're late because we can't get here early and the only seats open are the front row, so let's go up there. I don't think they were sitting up there to show off, but that was because that's what was available. So they were disfellowshipped in March. And then that summer, my baby sister got in trouble with a guy she met online. And he was a witness, and he was older than her, and she was a minor, and she got disfellowshipped, and he did not. So she was in a relationship with this guy that was older than her, over the age of 18. She's 16 or 17.
Okay.
They visit, they're in different states. Something happens. She comes straight home and tells the elder body. They refused to let my mom in that judicial meeting because my mother was disfellowshipped. So they had a judicial meeting with my 17-year-old sister with no adult present and asked her all the questions. And you know what the questions are.
Oh,
and then they still
extremely
disfellowshipped her.
Yeah.
Yes. Did you enjoy it? I don't want to get into it because it really makes me angry, but my mom should have pressed charges on that brother. She should have pressed charges. I don't know why my dad didn't, unless he maybe didn't know, because they probably didn't tell him. But despite the fact that my sister came home and immediately talked to the elders to tell them what happened because she wanted to right the wrong, they disfellowshipped her. And the asshole that did this, that pressured her, that was older, got reproved. And that kind of stuff, that doesn't sit well with me. So now I'm newly married. My mom is disfellowshipped. My parents are breaking up. I'm taking care of my dad. My baby sister gets disfellowshipped. Okay. So now fast forward to like August of this same year, all this is happening. My middle sister, who couldn't be in my wedding because she was privately reproved at the time, or maybe publicly, I can't remember. That sister runs off to South Carolina and marries some guy that she met online, or no, He was friends with the guy my sister got in trouble with. So she met this guy and they got married. They got married. They knew each other for like 3 months. So I've lost everybody. I'm not close to my extended family. My husband won't let me see my mom. My mom is disfellowshipped. My dad's falling apart. My baby sister's now disfellowshipped, and my middle sister is gone. And I was a fucking mess. I can remember when my baby sister called me and told me what happened and that she was getting disfellowshipped. I was driving and I just fell apart. Like, it was like she told me she was about to die tomorrow. Because I had already had so much loss that I didn't know what I was going to do. And things weren't great with my husband. You know, I didn't have anybody. So she stayed disfellowship for like a year or two, but I still talk to her here and there. It wasn't like we had before. It was very confusing, I guess, for me to be in that situation and to know whether I should talk to her or not. Because you know, the humanity and the relationship and your brains are telling you, your heart's telling you that she needs you. Like, you don't know what's going on. She's only 17, she's 18, and I'm 21, have a house, have stability, or at least a sense of it. And she's off disfellowship. My mom is gone. My other sister's gone. Like, where's baby girl? What's she doing? Does she need me? And there were times where she called me falling apart because of things that were going on in her life because she didn't have anybody. And it was just really fucked up. That whole period of my life was really fucked up. But I still clung to the fucking religion and the people and remember a pioneer sister giving me a compliment that Jehovah must be so proud of me for my being faithful to him despite everybody in my family falling off, and how me respecting the disfellowshipping arrangement would bring me blessings. And I just was like, thank you. Like, can we just not talk about my family and what's going on and just focus on what we're doing now, which is service? It is a mess, Michael.
Yeah, it's horribly abusive to everyone involved in that situation. Can I ask, did your baby sister, who was contacting you for advice or telling you what was going on in her life, was she at that time talking to your disfellowshipped mom? Like, did she ever contact her mom, your mom, for advice and such as well? Did they have each other, or did the disfellowshipping, I guess, that they were each experiencing somehow keep them mutually separated?
No, so my baby sister was living with my dad at first, and when my mom left and moved in with the new guy, my baby sister was kind of with my dad, but she was a senior in high school, so still young and in school, but she ended up quitting school and moving in with my mom. So she lived with my mom and stepdad that whole time, even when she got in trouble and got disfellowshipped. But she was a waitress, she was working late nights, she was partying and hanging out with worldly people. And so I was worried about her and what she was doing. My mom had no control or say so over what she did because who is she to talk? And my baby sister knew that. You have no right to tell me how to behave or what to do or what time to be in because of what you've done. And so she was wilding out, and I was just worried about her safety and whether she was going to get I was also worried a lot about whether she was going to get reinstated because I knew I couldn't live much longer without them. We were very close our whole life, super close, because we were always together, and not having them, and they're just like, it's like they were just plucked away from me one at a time when things were already so new for me, and I'm learning this new thing about marriage and living on your own and paying bills and saving money and all the stuff that you should be excited about and all that was just overshadowed by all this loss. And to me, it was like deaths because that's the way I was programmed to feel and think that they were dead to me now,
Mhm.
but they weren't. And so it was just really confusing. And I wanted to be with them, but I didn't want to disappoint Jehovah. And I didn't want my husband to be upset with me because, Lord, he would just really dig in, when he found out that I had been with them or I had seen them. So I would lie and hide it from him a lot because I just couldn't cut them off altogether. So it was a really, really tough time. And then eventually he lost his privileges of his own behavior because he got drunk at a party, a witness party, and then acted a fucking fool. And everybody saw it. And it just started this series of events with him that continued until he eventually got disfellowshipped. Um, for he got into a relationship with another sister in the hall who was my friend. Like she's at my house cutting my hair one week, and the next week she's at my house fucking my husband. So that was cool. And again, I took that, it was all about me and my hurt and my pain and what was done to me and my embarrassment, because when one spouse is disfellowshipped and the other isn't, you kind of know why, right? You kind of know what that's about. It's not always the case. I know some that have been disfellowshipped for drinking problems, which is unfortunate in itself because that's a disease. But, you know, I was so like bad off with that I just wanted to drive myself into a tree at times. I did not know how to cope with that. And nobody
This is everything.
really. Hmm?
Appearance is everything,
Oh
right?
yeah.
How you appear in the congregation. And I mean, not to mention all of what your husband was doing and how your feelings around that and just all of the other. I don't know where the rest of your family was at that time, if they were still disfellowshipped or whatever. So you're very isolated. It's just, it's horrible. Again, there's just, when you really look at what Jehovah's Witnesses bring into people's lives, there's just so much unnecessary pain and negativity on top of things that are already painful and negative that happen in life. Like I always say, they don't cause everything, but there's nothing they can't make worse.
Yeah. And so, looking back now, I know affairs happen.
Sure.
It's it's not a fun thing, whether you're a participant in it or the innocent party in it. But it just happened. But what made it worse was the amplification of the shame that came with it because everyone knew. And so now they announce him as he was no longer a ministerial servant and reproved. And then on top of that, a year or two later, he's disfellowshipped. And so my mom and sister had been reinstated at that point, and we were all still pretty active in each other's life. But now he's disfellowshipped. So things change again. They can't come over. I have to go to their house. We can't go out to eat after the assembly because he's with me and he can't be eating with us and that kind of stupidity. And we really did our best to work through. We didn't go to therapy, and I really should have. But we worked through it. We made up. We got a little better, but not truly, not real, not honestly. And we did the best we could with it for a long time. He, I don't think ever was fully mentally back in after that because, again, he has his own demons and no one tried to help him with the why,
Hmm.
why he behaves this way, why he's triggered. And I didn't either. Because I didn't, he would never tell me the full story. And that's his to own and have, and he's worked through a lot of that now. But it was more like the repercussions of the sin and what you've done to Jehovah and how you've hurt Jehovah. And in that judicial meeting, so I found out about the affair and I called the elders. And one of the first things I told them was, And by the way, he and I had sex before we were married too. So I went ahead and let that out there. I think we'd been married like 5 years at this point. So 5 years had passed. We have this judicial meeting with what he is going on with him. And then I'm like, by the way, you know, I'm guilty too, because I was still carrying that. And they had a combined meeting with us. And I tell you, it was so awful to answer those questions because they're asking him questions about the current situation with her, with me in the room. Details that I didn't know and didn't want to know and should not have known because that was theirs. Um, that's how I feel now. Some people are different. They want to know. I should not have known. It wasn't healthy for me, so I lost it. And they ended up asking me to leave so that they could continue. Well, he ended up getting disfellowshipped, and the woman that he was involved with did not. And so again, like I felt like that was so unfair, and I held a lot of resentment toward her. And look what y'all have done to me. But affairs are not about that. They're about something that you don't have, usually, or you're not happy in a certain aspect. As a counselor, I'm sure you know all the whys and most of that. But again, I made it about me. I was super upset, devastated. The congregation did their best, I think, to support me because you don't really know how to support someone in that situation unless you've been in it. And really, all I needed was for them to treat me the same as they always did. Invite me to things and, you know, come over and whatever. And I have one sister in particular that I still talk to very rarely. We worked together too, and she is the one that got me through that. She just kind of carried me and took me under her wing and was like a sister to me. And I love her so much, even to this day, even though our paths don't cross very often anymore. But she's a real, true, good person. And she would be this way with whoever, whatever their circumstances are, because she's just a really good soul. But anyway, so we still had to answer all the weird questions, even though we were married. How often were you together? Did you enjoy it? Did you do it this way or that way? And I'm just very matter of fact. Yes, no, yes. I was as honest as I could be. Because at that point, I was like, I don't have anything to lose. I don't really care anymore if I get this fellowship. But then after they started asking him more detailed questions, and I was about to fall onto the floor because I could not hear any more of this. And they just didn't have any awareness of what they were asking this man about this relationship in front of me. And it was almost like,
No, there's no empathy.
ugh. So I got up crying and went to the bathroom, and one of the elders came out of the meeting and followed me into the bathroom and just held me, just hugged me, held me. And he said, you don't need to be in there anymore. And I'm like, no kidding. No, I don't. No, I don't want to hear this stuff. And we all knew he was going to get disfellowshipped. I don't know why we had the pretense of that meeting. We knew it was going to happen. He'd already been reproved, and they caught him lying in this meeting. So we know this is going to happen. Oh, so he was disfellowshipped for a year. And then like I got pregnant a few months after he got reinstated, or right as he was getting reinstated. And the new baby kind of glossed over a lot of, I put my focus into her, and we moved on from that eventually. And then my sister was reinstated, my mom was reinstated. So we were all back together. And that was 2010, 2009, 2010. Any questions before I move on? That's a lot right there.
That's just I'm sorry that you were subjected to that. Again, in the vein of there's nothing they can't make worse. You know, these judicial committees where they're asking people all these sexual details and such are their own sexual abuse. I mean, this isn't something that you should be subjected to, and to be put in those situations. And in the end, it's really all about shame, isn't it? It's about making you feel bad. That's why they needed him in that meeting. They needed him to be properly shamed. They needed to
Mm-hmm.
exercise their authority over him. And at the end of the day, it's really about crime and punishment. It's not about, you said it earlier, it's not about what makes this person tick, and why is this person perhaps acting out in a specific way. Are there things that this person is struggling with? Are there things in this person's past? Does this person have trauma? And this is a trauma response, and they're not qualified or trained in any way to handle any of that anyway. I think about my dad, who was uh, about as emotionally intelligent as this pen I'm holding, and he was in judicial committees, and that's terrifying. That, like, I know my dad, he raised me. This guy shouldn't be telling people how it is, or helping people to work through things. He was a very harsh man in many ways, though I understand he may have been different at the Kingdom Hall. It's just an awful situation, made more awful by the circumstances and what they put you through. And I just feel sorry, for everybody involved. Um, you don't need to add more pain to the pain that's already there, and nobody
Yeah.
wins.
And that's what they did, was they pointed out how guilty he was and the shame that he should feel in front of me, and that added to my righteousness, my righteous anger that I felt, and the hurt that I felt. Instead of giving us practical tools that would have benefited both of us in that situation, they didn't. And it just made a bad situation worse. And some of these elders, they were on my mom's committee, and they had told my mom, "You think crying's going to help you?" Because my mom was truly sorry. She was sorry that she hurt Jehovah. Um, and they told her that, if you think crying's going to help you, then you're wrong, because it doesn't make a difference. We've seen you cry before, and they put you through all that knowing what they're going to do anyway. So, oh, fun fact, one of the elders on my mom's committee was having an affair at the time of my mom's judicial committee. And that came out about a year after they had disfellowshipped my mom.
And there is nobody who is going to be more harsh on somebody who's doing something than a person who's already doing that
Hmm.
themselves, and having to, you know, try to punish this person over here, and pretend in some, denial that they're not doing the same thing. It makes them feel a cut above or more righteous. Well, at least I'm not as bad as her, or whatever the case
Hmm.
may be. People have ways of rationalizing just about anything.
Yeah.
And wow. Uh, uh,
Yeah, it's crazy. They got caught, these two, on a cruise. They all, like, a bunch of witnesses went on a cruise together, a bunch of couples, and they got caught doing their thing, on the cruise. But they ended up getting this fellowship, and they're close to my mom now. They're friends, so I
and
see
just
them
look
there.
at, we're talking, I mean, you're just talking about a small sample size of Jehovah's people here, as they would be call themselves. And look at all the drama, all the relational drama, all the affairs, and whatever that was going on, all the secrets, right? Because they force you to, no one's allowed to be themselves. Everyone's trying to be someone they're not in some way in that organization. And it comes out in all these other behaviors. And that stuff goes on all the time. So then you mentioned offhandedly that you had a baby, and so I don't know, did you and your husband, I guess, stay together? Was he reinstated? And you
Hmm.
had a kiddo, and where'd your life take you?
Yes, so he did get reinstated, and we had our daughter. So I was working for some witnesses at their construction company, and before he was disfellowshipped and I was privately reproved for my behavior before marriage, I was working at in a different company, making really good money, that I had quit to pioneer. And my husband and I gave our experience on the assembly, the circuit assembly, about how I left my job and my nice salary to Pioneer, and, you know, the decisions that led up to that. And at that assembly, the district overseer counseled me on my shirt. I was wearing, you know, a nice blouse tucked in with a pencil skirt, long enough, completely fine. And the top of the shirt probably was here, which is fine. He made me pin it to my neck. He made me pin, and I thought it was ridiculous. And that's what made me nervous about being on that stage, was the fact that he had to say something about my clothing. Um, anyway, that was one of 3 assemblies I've been on. I've been on the stage a few times. But I quit this job to Pioneer, had to get off the list because I was privately reproved, didn't get to go to Pioneer school. That was one struggling summer of trying to get them hours just to get taken off the list because of some confessions. And then when he got reinstated, I had been working for this brother that was in another congregation at one time and had moved to ours. Small construction company, needed somebody to run the office, and I knew how to do that. So he hired me for 2 days a week. Well, when my husband got disfellowshipped, I went to him, my boss, and I said, my life is falling, but pretty much my life is falling apart. I need to work for you full time, or I need to find another job. And he was like, no, you're going to stay here and you can work full time. So I loved that job. I worked for them full time for 12 years. When I had my daughter, he paid me, you know, maternity leave. I went back as soon as I could. Even to this day, I have fond memories of the people I worked with and the business that we built together. And things were okay. You know, I had them, they had become like a second family. There were some things that were kind of weird, you know, with him. He would talk on the phone a lot to me at first, and I took it as him wanting me to understand his business and him. And some of it was probably unnecessary at the time. But we got really close, and we kind of doubled, tripled the business that we were doing, because you know, I helped him get organized and do some advertising and grow and whatever. So that was good. My daughter, beautiful, sweet little girl. You know, she sat through meetings like a trooper, was never bad. And now I have another child now who's just the exact opposite, who I could not imagine bringing into a Kingdom Hall. But you know, she was a good kid. I taught her about Jehovah, and we took her out in service, and she commented, and she got on the school at one point. And then in 2014, my dad got really sick. So you ever seen those memes where it's like a roller coaster and you're at the top and it's like 2016 and everything was downhill after that?
Mhm.
Okay, so that was me, 2014. My mom paid for all of us to go to Disney World. It was amazing. And I'm talking about us 3 girls and our 3 husbands, and 2 of us had kids. She paid for us all to go. It was amazing, except for my husband being a fool. And he drinks heavily. He gets obnoxious and ruins some moments for us there. But that's we won't get too much into that because it's been dealt with at this point. But I felt like things were really good. I had started working out. I was very fit. I was happy with myself. I was working full time, very spiritual minded, commented, gave impromptu talks all the time. You know, I was that sister they would ask, and I'd get up there and do it like I had practiced for weeks. And my daughter was doing well. My husband stopped going to meetings. He would go to Sunday occasionally. And I didn't push him too much. He worked a lot and just kind of let it be. But Sundays, I expected him to go, and he would make us late all the time. So that was really irritating. But the brothers, the brothers gave me a lot of, not the elders, but the brothers in the congregation, I felt like gave me a lot of attention. And I mean, like, they would make a point to come and talk to me and compliment me on, because I didn't dress like a mama. I dressed very businesslike, and I worked out and I was in shape and I dressed like that. And I mean, even the one elder who was on my judicial committee complimented me one time on one of my skirts. And when I looked in the mirror at my backside, there's a big flower right on the ass. And he told me how much he loved that skirt. And looking back now, I'm like, you fucking freak. Like, y'all are all a bunch of freaks. No wonder you like sitting in those meetings where you ask these questions. There's other elders that sisters have told me, have you ever noticed how he always puts his hand on your waist? And I was like, yeah, he does. He makes a point to come and get close to me and put his hands on me. And so that was kind of there. At some point in this time frame, I found out that my best friend as a child was molested by her sister's husband. And I was like, yeah, I was over there one time. I was 16. I was at their house. I don't remember why. Probably just hanging out or whatever. And they gave me like a Boone's Farm, those wine coolers.
Mhm.
And I'm underage, and they gave me this alcohol. And I had driven there. And she wanted me to stay. She said, you've been drinking now, you shouldn't go anywhere. And I was starting to feel uncomfortable. And I was like, no, I really have to go. So I ended up, getting up to leave, and her husband walked me out. This is the man that molested my friend. And he stopped me when we got into the carport, and he's baptized. He's baptized. He stopped me and hugged me. And I was so frozen in that moment of like, what is happening right now? I could feel his heart pounding through his chest because he was so excited that he was touching me, and I could not get out of there fast enough. And then I didn't tell anyone about this. I think I told my husband. Well, he wasn't my husband then, but I told him about it later. Come to find out, yeah, he molested my best friend. The elders knew, did nothing. There was one elder that asked me questions about this later on as an adult, and that elder was removed as an elder because he was digging into it a little bit. And I'm not positive that that's why he was removed, but I feel pretty strongly about that being the reason that he was taken off the elder body, and he even moved to another congregation because he was asking questions about something that there were no two witnesses to. And I think he was hoping that I could be that second witness and explain, even though I wasn't technically molested by this guy, he tried to. So there was another time I was at their house and they gave me alcohol, and I had my baby sister with me. And I mean, they were witnesses. Really, you shouldn't be doing that at all, but they were setting me up to do something inappropriate. And they're still active. There was a friend of mine I was real close to. I had a little girl and she had two little girls, and I told her, I was like, do not, and her kids were going to these people's house and spending the night.
Mm.
And I'm like, you cannot let your kids go there. And I called the elders and I said, you need to if you don't tell her why she can't let her kids go over there, then I will. And they ended up talking to her and told her, because she had already been letting her kids spend the night over there. And there's no telling what happened. I'm sure something did happen because he wasn't very, I don't know. He's a creep, and there's lots of them, come to find out. But, yeah. So anyway, I kind of don't know where to go from there. You might have to edit this part out.
Oh, you're fine.
Ask me a question.
It's definitely tough to see that things were going on and people knew and nobody was doing anything. I mean, if nothing else, why are they giving you at 16? Why are they giving you alcohol and such? Like, it's just kind of strange.
Yeah.
And then you find out that there's other things, and there were a lot of people who, I mean, like you were talking about, the brothers were inappropriate with you in the Kingdom Hall. You know, your husband wasn't coming to the meetings anymore. It sounds like, and brothers at the Kingdom Hall were starting to talk to you in certain ways, or I mean, if people noticed that there were brothers who were like touching your weight or like putting their hands in, like that just shows there are a lot of there's no boundaries, and a
Hmm.
lot of these brothers feel like they can do whatever they want, and it's just a situation and an environment that's rife for abuse. It's set up in a way that abusive people can thrive, and of all different types, unfortunately. And did did you ever have to say anything or say anything to any of the elders or brothers later in these congregations, or did you ever tell your husband, like, you know what, this brother is like he keeps touching
I
me
didn't,
in ways that's odd?
yeah, I didn't really make anything of it because I felt like I could trust them because they were Jehovah's Witnesses.
There you go, that implicit trust. Yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't think
Set
too
up.
much of it. But then when he and I started having issues again, I should have said something. I should have said something about it at the time. But again, I was trusting. So while I thought, this is odd, they're giving me alcohol and they want me to spend the night. And I say they because she was in on it, the wife.
Hmm.
I was like, it's whatever. Are these brothers? They're just being nice because I'm here. My husband's not here. The sisters aren't talking to me. In fact, I've had sisters tell me they didn't want me talking to their husbands. And I've had brothers. There's one who was like a little brother to me. We went to middle school. They had moved. They were new in the area. Me and my sisters always teased him like he was our brother. Um, he texted me out of the I texted him one day and I sent him a video of when him and his girlfriend were dating and their daughter and her were at our house, me and my husband's house. I was like, do you remember this day? He's chasing the kids around the room. It's hilarious. And the girls are just screaming and going in circles. And then his response was, if you're going to text me, you need to include my wife in a group message. And I was like, I just replied, nope, don't need to text you. Your wife is jealous. I don't know what's going on with y'all, but this is very unusual. I'm not going to group text you. So I just won't text you because I don't need to text you. I just thought it was cute. And then the same brother texted me without his wife in the text. Ask him, don't forget about me. We miss you at the Kingdom Hall. I blocked him after that because that's stupid. But I feel like a lot of the sisters didn't like it, and it's not because I wanted their husbands. It was just because they were jealous of, I don't know, because I worked out or of the fact that their husband was having a conversation with me because I could talk about sports and cars or whatever it is they were talking about in the moment, construction, because I know how to have a conversation and you don't show any interest in anything. So you can't just talk about Jehovah all the time. There's more to life than that. And if you maybe work on your personality a little bit, maybe they would want to talk to you too. So yeah, that was the thing.
Well,
But
there's
the
also just the obsession that Jehovah's Witnesses have with sex.
yeah.
I mean, they talk about it all the time. Like, it's so on their mind. You know, they talk about how the world is so sex crazed, but it's Jehovah's Witnesses,
Hmm.
and the repression they create, that then causes a lot of the obsession on the backside of that. And I think there were a lot of people who were very unhappy in their relationships as well, because a lot of those marriages were born out of the wrong things to begin with. And I just think that there's just a lot of jealousy, there's a lot of suspicion. Some of it may be founded because it's a very I mean, the atmosphere, I think, creates a lot of people who are obsessed with that. And I think that there's also just a lot of fear because they're always talking about how, I don't know. Well, brothers and sisters can't be friends, right? A
Mhm.
man and a woman cannot be friends. It is literally impossible. They must hook up. It is it is destined to be in all situations as they see it. And I think because of that, they kind of see all situations as though that is a potential. And I think that
Mhm.
it creates a lot of really unhealthy things.
It does. It does. And it made me feel like I didn't fit in with the sisters, and I also felt like I had to be really careful about talking to the brothers
Mhm.
because I didn't wanna give anybody a wrong impression. I was just trying to raise my daughter and, to be a Jehovah's Witness and to make meetings, and I was trying to support him and whatever he was going through. He struggles with depression. So, I'm just trying to be all the things and just trying to make it. And then I've got these sisters, I felt like they were judging me, and I really was just trying to be happy. So that continued on. I worked for this brother and got close to them, and then in 2014, so, we had that great family vacation. My mom took us all to Disney World in like into May. And then in June, we went to visit my dad, who is now living in another state with his mom. And he'd been having some health problems. Well, that visit, we always had that family reunion the first Sunday in June, like the hottest Sunday in June. But we went, and my dad wasn't able to speak very well. Like he sounded super hoarse and he couldn't swallow. And he's like, "Well, they want to do a biopsy on this thing in my throat, but they can't because my sodium levels are too low." Well, he's an alcoholic, so that's a natural thing that their sodium is low. So he was going to have to go get a what do you call it? Like a IV injection to get his sodium levels raised up so he could go through the biopsy process. And we insisted that he go because while we were on that visit, he nearly choked to death because he couldn't breathe. We went to My baby sister and I drove home to Louisiana, and my middle sister, who lived in South Carolina, stayed with him in the hospital, waiting in the ER to get the IV so he could get the biopsy. Well, when the nurse said, "Say ah," they could see a tumor when he opened his mouth. He had stage 4 throat cancer. It started on his voice box. So, my dad, when him and my mom broke up, he never recovered from that. He just never recovered. And he stopped taking care of himself. His health declined. Um, he had a house close to where I lived in here that I took care of. And I basically managed his life here that he left while he survived up there and was on disability and whatnot. Well, in the ER, when the nurse gave him like a blood pressure pill, and my middle sister was there without us, my dad choked on it and turned blue. Like the opening of his throat was so small that he couldn't even swallow a pill. And they had to incubate him and do a trach. And he spent almost 3 weeks in the hospital dealing with that. And they had to put a feeding tube in. And it was just like the world ended. My world was like all about that at that point. And my boss was super supportive. Don't need to worry about your job. Um, we're going to take care of it. You do what you need to do. They kept paying me. The boss's daughter, on the other hand, was giving me some problems. Um, just because you're not here doesn't mean I don't, I got to do this. And it was like, I don't care about that right now. Like, she just had no awareness. She still doesn't. But anyway, we stopped everything. That was when that international convention took place. And well, we had one in New Orleans anyway. It was the worst convention I've ever fucking went to. My dad was in the hospital. I should have been with him. It was in New Orleans, which is notorious for bad traffic, parking, and terrible weather. So we are at this, even though we lived 45 minutes away, we still got a hotel. There were the valet took an hour to get our car to us. You know, my 3-year-old daughter's like falling asleep in the waiting area because, you know, and the second day we walked, and poor baby, her shoes were too small and her feet swole up. And I felt absolutely horrible for making her walk, you know, the 5 blocks. But I was like, we can't wait for the car. We'll miss half the convention. It was just terrible. I did not enjoy it whatsoever. And I told him, I was like, we're never doing this where we stay again. If they have another one of these in New Orleans, we're not staying. We're going to drive. And after that, I went back to Mississippi and focused on my dad. And my dad ended up having to have his voice box, his lymph nodes, his little dangly thing in the back of it. I don't know what you call that thing. Yeah, all that was removed. And he underwent a 19-hour surgery where this amazing doctor took a graft of skin from his arm and built him an esophagus from his arm skin so that he could eat and drink and swallow. And he never spoke. He could never talk again. He had a stoma, and he lived that way for a couple years. After that surgery, he couldn't walk because his circulation from smoking was so bad that literally, like, he was 99% blocked in one leg and 100 in the other. His arteries had built blood vessels around the blockages to get some type of blood flow in his body. And he had to undergo physical therapy for several weeks. And I told him, you're not going to live with Mama. You're coming home with me. So at this point, my husband's not really making meetings. My dad is dying. I'm still working full time. I'm still a full-time witness. I didn't stop going to meetings. I didn't stop going out in service. My dad's living in my house, which was a challenge because he's undergoing a life-changing event. He can't talk anymore. He can't eat. He can't walk. He had this metal spoon and he would clank it on the headboard to call me. Or he would call my phone at 2 a.m. to wake me up because he couldn't call across the house for me to help him go to the bathroom. And he just wasn't really making any improvements either. He had all these tubes and drainage and, you know, and staples, and I cleaned. And this is traumatizing for me too.
Mm-hmm.
And my baby sister helped, and I had a couple sitters that would come in and help that I paid. And, you know, I was like, Dad, you've got to start trying to get better because you can't live like this and forever. And I can't take care of you forever. I had a baby, you know, I think she was 4 maybe. And, I think the day came when I made him get in the tub. I bathed my dad, and that for him was probably humiliating. And he had shorts on or whatever, but I'm like, you have to do this. I have to make you do this. You have to do it. And so we did it, and I helped him through it. And then after that, I would see him trying to do things independently. And he eventually started walking better. He would cook dinner for us occasionally. And he got to the point where he was ready to go home. He never quit drinking alcohol. He just started hiding it better. And I'm still working through feelings of anger with him on that. But because we had a few falling outs after that about that. Like, this is why you were sick. This and smoking. And you had to quit smoking because you can't do it anymore. But the drinking, he would just hide it. And he never quit drinking. But he did go home. So that was 2014. My boss's daughter at this time of my dad's severe illness was getting married. And I practically raised this girl. She was 14 years old when I started working for them. I picked her up for work because he didn't let her go to school. I made her get her GED. I said, you cannot come to work with me unless you're doing some type of schooling and get your GED. So she did. And she started working with me in the office full time at like 16. So, you know, I'm in my 20s, 28, 30 maybe. This girl is a teenager. she's a child that should be in school, and I'm having to teach her how to work in an office because this is what my boss is telling me to do. I didn't like it. I thought she should be in school, but I was like, this is what I got. And I taught her everything that I could possibly teach her. She was with me in service. It kind of sounds like that lady I was talking about at the beginning, but she latched on to me. And as much as I wanted her to not be with me, a lot of times I was what she had because her mom was depressed in bed and her dad worked all the time. So, and she just latched on to my daughter too. But she was getting married and she's got a lot of emotional problems. And she could not understand why I wasn't happy. My dad is dying. My whole life has changed. And I'm supposed to be excited that you're getting married. I don't really care. I mean, I cared, but I'm not going to pretend to be happy in this moment for you because you don't understand what's happening. I think she was 22 at the time, getting married. And she just, it just was really terrible, the timing of that with my dad. And it's not that I didn't want to be happy for her, that I wasn't happy for her. I just was dealing with so much. And um he dad went home, was doing all right. And then in 2016, he opted in for a surgery to correct the blockages in his legs. And he didn't make it through that surgery. He didn't tell us about it until like the day before, so we weren't there. But he went into the hospital on a Thursday, had the operation, and then on Saturday, they were like, you need to come now because he's not, we can't, they couldn't even finish the surgery. They couldn't, he was so swollen from a feeding tube and all that, that they had trouble with the operation. And by the time I got there, it was like, he wasn't coming back from that, and they didn't know if he could even hear us, and they called us into this room, to talk about decisions, and just was very unexpected. I was telling them, we FaceTime the night before the surgery, which I have a screenshot of, and my dad, he's FaceTiming me like this right now, and my picture is little in the side, and he's got a little smirk on his face, but then when he's FaceTiming his granddaughter, I mean, just the big smile he has on his face. And that's the last picture I have of him alive. And I treasure that so much because I'm the only one of my sisters that took that moment to do it because we'd always had that bond and I took care of him. And, we were close. So baby sister and I get there on Saturday to visit and not understanding the gravity of the situation. And they call us into a room and tell us that we need to make decisions. And that's the most uncomfortable, terrifying time I've ever had to deal with. It's not anything like you see in the movies where someone's peacefully resting and they go. It's not like that. It wasn't like that for him. But my dad always told me, if I'm on a machine, give me a fighting chance. And I told him, I was like, I'm going to give you a chance. Now, he had been like that for a day at least. I said, I'm going to give you another hour. And my mama, I was also afraid that she was going to hate me for making the wrong decision. And I didn't know where she was. She said, your daddy wouldn't want to be like this. So we ended up making the decision to turn off the stuff and stop the medication. And he did pass on July 16th. And that was 2016. Not a single elder from my congregation came to my daddy's funeral. Not one of them. And these were men that knew me my whole life and knew my daddy the whole time my mom was in that organization. And not a single one of them bothered to make the 4-hour trip. And I was so angry. I was so angry about that. I had to hold it together. And I just couldn't. Anyway, but my boss came And my best friend, the one that I mentioned earlier that I still talk to occasionally, who is a witness, they came and they supported me. And again, she got me through that because my husband was pretty much useless. He's like getting in the passenger seat to let me drive and follow the freaking hearse because we're in Mississippi. He doesn't know where he's going. I'm like, I don't live here, you fool. But she made him drive, you know, and the whole way the funeral was handled was pretty awful. But again, none of those family members are witnesses. And I'm thinking I have to handle this in a witness way to set an example for my non witness family of how we do things. But none of the brothers offered to come and give a talk. None of them offered to come and give a prayer. None of them even offered to come up there. So I had my husband, who wasn't going to meetings, do the prayer and a brief. I said, you got 5 minutes because daddy wouldn't want any more than that. 5 minutes to say something meaningful at this grave site, and that's going to be it. And so at the funeral, he wrote a beautiful poem from my dad's perspective. For us, it was gorgeous. And then at the gravesite, he said a very brief prayer, and he never said the name Jehovah. And I thought something of it at the time, but I thought he did it for the family. But he did it because he was physically in and mentally out. That's where he was, and I didn't know it at the time. So, you know, we got through that, and then he started seeing a girl from work, and the whole rocky marriage affair thing happened again. But this time, it wasn't about me anymore. It was about, I'm not dealing with this anymore. I'm sick of this. I'm not dealing with it. I've been through enough shit, and you're going to have to get out. And it took him a while, but he finally got out. I convinced him to move out and try to get himself together. And when he did, I filed for divorce, and the brothers did not like it at all. They gave me so much grief over that. They were suspicious that I was making it up. They thought that I should just be a better wife. You know, I'm going to you saying my husband is not coming home at night. He's off of work at 6 and he's not coming until 9 or 10 o'clock. And I know something's up. I'm seeing messages on social media, you know, when I look at his phone, then he changed his phone passcode. Something is going on. You just need to put his plate in the microwave and just, you know, have it ready for when he comes home. You just need to keep on setting a good example. And I'm like, no, I can't. I can't, no. And eventually I quit listening to them. You know, there was even a moment where he was so depressed and so hurt, I think, at his own actions, even though he never, at this point, he hadn't admitted anything to me, but he was talking about hurting himself and hurting someone else. He's like, I could just hurt someone and me. And I called the elders because it scared me. I called the elders and they said, he doesn't mean anything. Just take your daughter in the room with you tonight when you go to bed. So I can't ask him to leave. I can't stay somewhere. And I'm thinking I have to listen to these idiots. So I did.
Were you gonna use your daughter as a shield? What the?
No, I was just going to keep her from getting hurt. If he was intending on hurting her, he would never hurt her.
Okay.
But that was what they meant by that.
Okay.
Just super unhealthy. Yeah. So, this is
The elders
2017.
weren't showing up for you in many ways. They didn't show up
Many
for you
ways.
at your dad's funeral. They didn't show up for you here in, this situation where your husband, who's already been down this path before, is now
Mhm.
repeating this pattern, and they're just acting like it's not happening when they know in the past it has. Again, just so much Jehovah's Witnesses, where's the love? Where's the
I
support?
know.
Where they say that it's there, but it's nowhere to be found. I'm sorry
right?
that you
And
had to be left alone, left isolated and alone dealing with all of this again.
yeah, and i- again, he's very private and didn't want me talking to anybody and would get upset if he found out that, I was talking to my sister about what was going on or anything. But I reached a point where I was like, I can't do this anymore. And I have to prove that it's happening because they're requiring proof. And went to his job and confronted them and embarrassed him in front of an entire department of people, which I'm not proud of that moment. Um, I'm not proud of that. I think it was wrong for me to do that, but I was doing it because I felt pressured to find proof. And even when I had proof and brought it to them with a letter that I had to write, uh, they questioned me on it and asked me if I was making it up. And I gave it to him and I said, no. And in fact, if anybody ever calls you asking if I'm free to remarry, I'm not interested whatsoever. Not interested in that. When I'm available, I'm still not available because I don't want, and then I'm like, it's up to these idiots as to whether I can be in another relationship. This is fucked up. I am 30. How old was I? 34 at the time. I'm a grown woman. These guys don't pay my bills. They don't cut my grass. They don't help me get my car to the shop. They don't take care of my child. They won't change a light bulb for me. Oh, in fact, I'm changing light bulbs and stocking the bathrooms at the Kingdom Hall. I'm the one that goes to Sam's and spends $200 a month on toilet paper and paper towels. And you have to organize the under the cabinets a certain way. I don't know if you know this, Michael, but there are standards to how you organize the supplies in the bathrooms because the circuit overseer likes it a certain way. And so here's how you do it. Take a picture so that whenever you do it on your own next month with the key and the alarm code and the getting in the gate and all that stuff you have to do, that you do it right because they're going to look at that. And I was like, okay, sure. But I did a fantastic job of that. I had that assignment for a couple years and took care of it faithfully. I also printed memorial invitations and those, what do they call it when they blast canvas a certain memorial or convention invite, and you have to print the dates and the theme and the times on the back of
Oh
the things.
yeah, yeah.
I'm the one that did that at my job. I printed them. I had to create the format on the computer, make sure it printed right, and then print 2,000 of them. So I did it. And in this little time frame of me and my husband being split up and the elders questioning me, and I'm going, this is wrong. Like, I know what's happening in my life. I don't need them to tell me what I can and cannot do because I have survived so far at this point without their help. And for that matter, without Jehovah's help, because he hasn't done anything for me. I've asked and he hasn't. He has just taken everything away from me. He took my mom, he took my sister, he took my husband, he took my dad, and now he's taken my faith, and I don't care anymore. So I went on a cruise that summer with my cousin and her husband and their son, her mom. My mom was there, and my daughter. It was a great Disney Alaskan cruise. Very expensive, but it was fun. I recommend it. And one of the nights that we got back to Vancouver, I wanted to go into the city on the train because I'd never been there before and we had time. And I went with my cousin. My cousin's a guy, and I posted a picture of us having a cocktail on my Instagram story. And then when I got back from that cruise, I had a shepherding call, and they told me that I am one of Jehovah's Witnesses even when I'm on vacation, and that I should be careful and mindful of my behavior. So here they are accusing me of going out with a man and being alone. And I'm like, it's my cousin. And they, oh no, no one told us anything. No one said it. But I know someone told you because this is the only thing that y'all could possibly be talking about right now is a picture that I posted on my Instagram of me and my cousin having a drink together. So I'm getting in this sharpening call. I'm like, okay, again, these idiots are in my house. I have the ability to pay every single bit of living here without any of their help, none of their emotional support. No, can I help you cut your grass? Can I take care of your dog when you're on vacation? No, no help offered ever. But you have the nerve to come in here in my house and tell me that I've misbehaved somewhere and also question me on if I'm studying with my daughter and asking my daughter if I'm studying with her to see what her answer is going to be before I have a chance to say anything. And of course, she has my back. She's like, "Yeah, I mean, we didn't
Sure,
really."
sure, but just the fact that they feel like they are entitled to your
Yeah.
life. They are entitled to tell you if you're free to remarry or not. They're entitled to determine. I mean, they didn't even seem to care. I thought two witnesses or, having corroborating evidence would be a thing where, with your husband having a second affair and now you've got evidence, like, shouldn't that be enough for them to act if they were going to? Not that we need them to act or even be involved, but in the real world. But just like they're just so full of it at every turn. And like you're saying, you're a grown woman. You don't need your babysitters to come in and tell you what you can and can't do. They have no real power.
Yeah, and at that point,
It's all
I was
made up.
starting to get this critical thinking where I'm like, why do they think that this is appropriate or okay? Like what why is this happening? And my sister's husband has been PMO forever, okay? He was literally just doing it for her. And he and I were close, and he recommended that I read a book he had just finished reading, and it was, In the Days of Rain. Let's see, I wrote it down. In the Days of Rain, it's A Daughter, a Father, and a Cult, written by Rebecca Scott. He's just like, "You should read this book. It's interesting." And it wasn't about Jehovah's Witnesses, it was about some other cult, but the terminology was so similar. So it kinda just clicked a button. Not completely there yet, but I stopped going to meetings regular. I was hit and miss, and my daughter was like 7, 8 years old, so she was indoctrinated because it doesn't take much for kids to be indoctrinated. And that age is where they kind of get deeper into it. And I'm worried about how I'm going to stop going as much because I wasn't quite awake, but I was so uncomfortable there. I was judging these men talking back from the stage to others. I didn't like it. I was just miserable, and I would just sit there and write stupid shit about what they were saying. Like, this idiot can't even pronounce the word correctly. This is the worst reader in this entire congregation, but because he has a penis, he can be up there teaching us. Stuff like that. That's what entertained me in those days. But eventually I got to the point where I'd heard some other things that helped me continue to wake up. One of them being a podcast that I heard. It was This American Life episode. It's episode 661, Act 1, if you ever want to go pull it up. It's called The Old Man on My Shoulder, Stories of Women in Unsettling Situations. When they try to explain what's wrong, they're told that they don't understand that there's nothing unsettling about it. So it was a story, a very brief act in this American Life episode about a girl who was Mormon, and she was in a situation where she had to talk to the elders. And I was like, wait, elders? She was being judged by these men about something she had done, and they were asking her very inappropriate questions. And I was like, those are the same questions that the elders asked me in my meeting and that they asked baby girl when she was in her meeting. This is not right. Like, and then I had just read that book. And so I told my brother-in-law about it. He's like, yeah, you know, 1914 is not the right year, right? And I was like, what? Um, and he didn't give me any more information. He just made suggestions because he knew I was in that place to accept it and to kind of move with it. So I went home and I just researched 1914, and I came across what's the book? The Johanna something. Oh, the one in about 1914 and 607 and how it was wrong. But the foreword of this book is basically telling this brother's perspective of how he knew it was wrong, and out of wanting to bring it to their attention, to the governing body's attention, that they had this information wrong, because he was honest, of honest heart, they disfellowshipped him. They disfellowshipped him for calling them out, and he's like, "But no, it's okay. You have it wrong. It's just probably an honest mistake." But they knew what they were doing, and so now I'm at a point where I know that they know that this is wrong, and they're lying about it, because I'm a pretty honest person. And I just was appalled, and I was like, I cannot believe that they knew that this was wrong and they disfellowshipped this guy for that. That's so messed up. And then I'm like, okay, what else can I get into? What else can I read or find out about to get a better picture? Like, surely there's a story about some other JW life, this JW life. Let me get into my podcast search and type this JW life. And there is a story about a guy and his wife and how they came to the process of waking up. And I was like, holy shit, what else can I find out? So then I got on YouTube and I find Lloyd Evans, and I'm like, this guy looks like a witness and he talks like a witness, and he's got all these witness books behind him. And his opening screen says this is satirical, so it's not a copyright infringement. I was like, okay, so he's just kind of like joking about this stuff. He's funny. Let me watch it. It's harmless, right? And so I found one about 1914 and watched it. And I was like, my jaw was on the floor. And so now I know I'm a part of a lie. And because I'm an honest person, I've always worked to be honest and do things the right way and set the right example. And I find out that they are wrong and they know they're wrong. And all this stuff that they're hiding, while they have the nerve to call out other religions for behavior, I was done. I couldn't do it. I'm like, this is against my conscience. I can't knock on someone's door and teach them this stuff. I can't. And so I was like, what am I going to do now? Because my daughter is a true believer. My mom is a true believer. My sisters are true believers. And I have to pretend. But it just goes everything in me to be fake. I can't do it. I was so miserable at the meetings. There were Sundays where I would drink a Monster with vodka in it before I went to the Sunday meeting, because I could not bring myself to go sober. And that, when I realized how unhealthy that was, that I was having to do that to tolerate something, I was like, I can't. So my husband and I's divorce was finalized in I think it was September 2018. And then Christmas Day 2018 was my last meeting that I went to, and I had a part. I was a householder. I went up there, I did my thing, and then I walked off that stage, grabbed my purse, walked out the back door, and never went in again. Well, I did, but not for a meeting. I went in, I called the next day or so to tell that elder that I can't stock the bathrooms anymore, because now I'm a single sister and I really don't have the time and the energy to do it. So, and he asked me if I would train the new sister. And so I was like, sure. So I met her at the hall, gave her the key, instructions. And in the meantime, she's telling me about her disfellowshipped son and how much she misses him, and how the elders are trying to control her relationship. And I was like, that's your son. He's always going to be your son, no matter what else. That's your son. Anyway, I don't know where they are now, but I walked out that door for that meeting I didn't even stay the whole meeting. I mean, when that part was over, I got my purse and I left. And I was like, I never want to go back there. And then I had to spend time deprogramming my daughter. So that took some time. But I'm so glad I did. And I'm so glad that she's not going to spend her formative years in that religion, and that she has the freedom to be and do the things that make her happy and not have to worry about other people's expectations. Um, she's doing really well, by the way.
Nice.
Yeah, so it was hard. It was really hard, but I was, again, so I just could not comprehend how they could know these things were wrong and still teach them and still expect us to do them. And then I read the I read the transcripts from the ARC hearing. I didn't listen to it. I read it and I highlighted things. And I just was like, this is some bullshit. I cannot believe this. I cannot believe he said those things. These are lies. How come they're not getting held responsible for these things? And, the whole CSA thing is just absolutely inexcusable. And I hope that one day they crash and burn and go absolutely bankrupt. That's my actual hopes and dreams. But,
Yeah, that's your hopes and dreams, at least regarding them.
yeah, yeah.
I'm glad that you were able to wake up to all of these realities. It is not easy, and it's not for the faint of heart to have to look at all of this. It's difficult to look at something that's been everything that you've had your whole life, and your whole support system is in it, and your family, or maybe like in this case your own child is a believer, and then you're going to lose so much in that. You're losing maybe your faith, you're losing your identity, you're losing your family, you're losing your stability, or perceived stability. There's just so many things there, and it can be, it's really a grieving process that goes along with all of that. It's not easy to learn all of this, and to lose everything that comes along with it. And a lot of people, I think, start to see things and then they back away because it's too much. It's that cognitive dissonance, that mental and emotional pain that feels physical because, well, I thought this was the truth and I value truth, or have been told to value truth my whole life. And now I'm seeing new evidence that perhaps this isn't true at all. That's really shattering.
It is. And I I give people the benefit of the doubt. You can consider it a quality or a personality flaw, I'm not sure. But I I truly believe that people are trying to do the right thing, or they're trying their best, because that's what I do. And when I realize that they're lying, that they're hiding, like, it was like this veil just dropped and I saw them for what they were. And I can't participate in that. And of course, the natural thing is to want to tell people, right? So I was careful, but I went to visit my sister and her daughter and her husband. They lived out of state, and I would go see them 2 or 3 times a year. And we were talking about the resurrection, I think. I didn't go to the meeting when I was there, and that just, shook her. She just did not. I said, I'm not going to go. But my daughter went with them, and I was okay with that. And one night we were sitting out by the fire and we were talking about, I was like, well, Dad's not going to get resurrected. And she's like, yes, he is. I said, that's not what they teach. Well, what do you mean? I said, they teach that if you had the chance to learn about Jehovah and you didn't accept it, then you die. There's no resurrection for you. And at the time, that was the teaching. I don't know what it is now. But she just did not agree with that. And I'm like, yeah, dad studied. Dad knew it was what it was, and he chose not to do it. He made his choice. He knows, and he made his choice not to. He will not be resurrected. That is what they teach. Well, it opened this whole can of worms. And I didn't get too deep into things I had learned, but I did use their teachings in conversation to debate what they were talking about. And they both just shut down and were, accusing me of apostasy or whatever. And from then, I've never been to their house since. And I'm talking about me and this girl, we're basically twins. We're super close and talk to each other every day. I came home, had a conversation with my mom. I'm like, Mom, why don't we accept blood? She tried to give me the explanation. I said, so basically that means that the wedding ring is more valuable than the marriage. If you want to compare it, you're telling me that the symbol of life is more important than the life. The symbol of the marriage is more important. That doesn't make any sense to me. And she couldn't explain her way out of it. And there were a couple other things that I brought up. I had elders call me. One of the elders, the one that consoled me in the bathroom for that judicial meeting, he called me. He had moved to another congregation. I hear that you're not going to the meetings anymore. I said, no, I'm not. Well, you have another life to think about. You have your daughter's life in your hands. Oh my God, I lost my shit on him. I said, you have never helped me with anything. You have never helped me with anything. And you have the nerve to call me right now and judge me and tell me. I said, now, if I were disfellowshipped, would you be calling me right now? No, you would not. You wouldn't have anything to do with me. But because I'm not, you think that it's okay to call me and tell me this. I said, and by the way, your involvement in my husband and I's marriage was none of your business. That meeting that we had with y'all was not helpful. It did more damage than it did good. And I just think you should know, well, we're obligated. I said, but do you think it was helpful? Do you think what I'm telling you right now and the way that it was handled, do you think it was appropriate for you and two other men to be involved in my marriage? Well, I mean, that's just what we have to do. I said, not for me anymore. Won't be doing that. But I made him answer my questions. And I told him, I was like, don't ever call me again. Don't ever call me again with this stuff, because I'm doing the best that I can and y'all were not there for me ever. And I'm done with that. You just want to call me and tell me that I'm killing my daughter? That's not helpful. It's so messed up, man.
Yeah, I mean, who does that? The balls it takes, or just the lack of
Audacity.
ability, the audacity, but I think it's more than that. I think it's just the lack of ability to see anybody else, the total blindness and the authority given to these guys to just go in and say whatever they want to anybody they want, and to never be to expect to never be called on it. And so I'm glad that you called about it, because that doesn't happen often. They just rule with absolution. Nobody challenges them. Nobody checks them. So it's pretty cool that you did that.
Oh yeah. I mean, they would come to my house. They had one elder that showed up. I was leaving and they blocked me in. I rolled my window down. I said, hey, what's up? He had his Bible, another guy with him. I didn't know who that was. And he's like, we miss you. I said, well, obviously you know where to find me. Well, we miss you at the meetings. Jehovah misses you. I said, did I ever say I left Jehovah? I'm just not going to the meetings. But when I want to go, I know where it is. And then I said, y'all go and have a nice day. I'm on my way out. And I rolled the window back up. And there was another sister, pioneer sister. Every Saturday for like 2 months, she'd come to my house. And then one day, her husband texted me and said that he was my new service overseer. I said, no, you're not. I don't know why you're texting me, and please tell your wife to stop coming to my house without an appointment. I know why. I know what you're doing. I know why you're doing it, and I'm asking you to leave me alone." And so they did. They stopped coming by. I got a camera put up so I would see when they actually did come by. And I heard a couple of them talking about me one time. They didn't know it was recording, and just kind of like, "Well, why did she stop going?" And the other one was like, "Oh, she's been through some stuff." And then he pointed at the camera and stopped talking. So it took a while for that to die down, for them to leave me alone. And it wasn't until, so my mom and my sisters think that I'm just weak and inactive, that I've gone through some stuff and I'm just dealing with a hard time, and that I'm going to bounce back. And it wasn't until, so have been in a relationship with someone and didn't tell them. I didn't lie about it, but I lied by omission, I guess. I didn't tell them about it because I knew what was going to happen, because we're
It's
not
not safe to
married.
tell them, so why would you
It's
tell
not
them?
safe. Right. And I tried to explain that to them. Um, but when they found out, when I got pregnant on purpose, and I went to my mom out of respect, and I told her, and she was happy. She was okay with it. And then when I left, like 2 days later, I got a letter in the mail from her telling me that it's great that I found someone, and she knows what that's like when she found her husband and how much she loved him. But basically, if I didn't go tell the elders, that she was going to tell them, and that she was going to remove me from our family group text. So I got kicked out of that. And I called the day I told my mom. I came home and called my middle sister, and I told her, and I mean, you think I, just like with my dad, you think I would have told her, I had told her that I was dying. I mean, she said it was Satan. That's just Satan. Jehovah's been there for you. And I'm like, it's not about that. It's about me and my life and what I want now. And I told her I am happy. I made this decision. Period. I'm happy. This is what I want. Now, whether you're going to be a part of that or not is up to you, but I will always be here for you. And I've never seen or talked to her. I mean, just briefly since then. She completely cut me off cold turkey. And mom, got the letter from her, and I responded to her letter with a letter and told her it was none of their business. The elders are my life is none of their business. I made these decisions. I'm grown. Please respect that. If you want to be a part of this, you can. If you don't, that's fine. I hate to see that, but it is what it is. And she did tell the elders, and the elders already knew but they had never told her. And my sister has been down to visit and not seen me. She's never met my daughter. My daughter's going to be 2 in March. And also didn't care to see her other niece, who she's known for her whole life, and at one point was super close to her. And I was my niece's favorite person, but I don't see her anymore. She doesn't respond to my messages anymore. My baby sister has been inactive, and I won't go into where she is with it, but she has a relationship with me. She is my best friend, my heart, my therapist, an amazing aunt to my children, and I don't know what I would do without her. She's just a very reasonable and, empathetic, good-hearted person. So I'm so thankful for her. And then my brother-in-law, of course, who helped me see some things and pointed me towards something that he knew I was ready for. So I'm really grateful. It's sad and disappointing that my middle sister and my mom aren't in my life. They will respond to me if I send them a message, depending on what it is. If it's something like a joke or a meme that I send them, because I still do that occasionally, they won't respond. I'm not in the family chat. I tried to do that. I made my own family group chat, and I named it Family Matters, which goes both ways. It's a family matter that we need to discuss, but family also matters to me. And I told them my first message in that group was, you cannot unfamily me. But I ended up having to delete the group later because my sister got so judgmental in her comments in there. The guy I mentioned earlier about when he was in choir and I had a crush on him my whole life.
Yeah.
He passed away unexpectedly. He disassociated himself and unapologetically. And so we had lost touch for some years, but then we were in touch again in the last 2 years. And we would message occasionally, and I knew where he was and he knew where I was, but we were still friends. Well, he died very unexpectedly, very young, and his sisters are witnesses. His ex-wife and ex-sister-in-law, who he was super close to and I talked to, are disassociated. So in this group text, we're talking about him, and I'm like, why do y'all care? He disassociated. He's not a witness. I was actually friends with him and touched, and in his life, but I don't know. It just confused me why they gave a crap about his death when you treated him like he was dead anyway. And his sisters, who were witnesses, made a point to be there at his deathbed, but they didn't talk to him before that. But they were there.
Him for years before.
Yes, absolutely.
As though he was dead before he was.
Absolutely did. And the family that he had made for himself, which happened to be his ex-wife and her sister and their daughter they had together, were there for him. And these JW sisters wouldn't eat in the waiting room with these disassociated family of his. So they're making it about them. And I called my sister. I texted her and I said, I need to talk to you. His death has made me think of some things that I need to say to you. And I told her, she didn't answer. No, actually, she sent me a voice memo, where you can record your voice and send it through text. And she's crying. She's like sobbing through this message because she's talking to her dead sister, right? I'm dead. And so I sent her, since you left Jehovah, it's like I have a hole in my heart. I'm not the same. It's like when daddy died. She's comparing me to when our dad died. Like she's forgotten that he literally died basically in my arms in front of me. You're comparing it. So I sent her another message back. I was very calm. I didn't cry. And I said, this friend's death has made me think about my deathbed or your deathbed. And I just want you to know that it doesn't have to be like this. I really hope that things will change one day for us because I'm here for you. I'm the same person. I don't want to talk about religion. We don't have to talk about it. I don't care what you do. You could be a witness or not be a witness. I love you the same. My love for you is not balanced on whether or not you're a Jehovah's Witness, whereas it's not the same for me. You only love me if I'm a witness. I love you unconditionally. She sent me a second message back, and this time she's sobbing again, and I could barely listen to it. And I just told her, I said, I want to know for my own peace of mind that if you or I died, that you understand where I am and my love for you. It's like she missed the whole point of the call. I'm telling you, now is the time because you don't know what's going to happen. I could be like him and have a heart attack, an aneurysm, a car crash, and then you're going, oh my God, she's actually dead. And you've missed out on all this life that we could have had. And then you're going to feel like shit because it's too late then. And I hope she keeps that message forever.
Unfortunately, for Jehovah's Witnesses, they don't feel like shit because they have this stupid belief system that's in the way that tells them that, well, the person's just sleeping. You don't really have to grieve their loss. Again, they'll be resurrected. In fact, maybe them dying is the best thing because then they can come back in the new system because they have paid the price for their sins. They have built in to their ridiculous doctrine these things that try to protect them. Well, they try to protect themselves or not feel their own feelings. Like you mentioned way back early in the interview, just stuffing your own feelings down. And that's what they do through these thought stopping techniques and these awful doctrines. And they do hurt. Jehovah's Witnesses still hurt today. I watched my mom be super upset when my one of my brothers was disfellowshipped. She's a human with feelings. They care, but they can't truly love. That unconditional love you showed for your sister there. She can't do that. There's something in the way, and it's entirely Jehovah's Witnesses. And that's the fruits that they bear out. They can care, but it can always only go to a certain point, and then they can't fully attach. And that's why in the end they detach from us, because they never are allowed to fully attach. They're always keeping everybody at arm's length because anyone could be a potential threat to their spirituality and ultimately saving their own lives, which is what they truly care about. And it's just a shame to watch, yet another family be torn apart by this. And I know of situations where these deaths have happened, and it's horrible. There you have Jehovah's Witnesses. They shun somebody to the end, and yet they're now bereaved in some way. You
Yeah.
did so much of that to yourself.
Mhm.
You
It's
shun somebody, and it's all about you and your feelings, not, oh my God, here's this lonely person who I have treated as though they were dead before they had to, who has now actually passed. And oh, what horror that person must have felt. It's still all about them and their feelings as Jehovah's Witnesses. It's always about them and their feelings.
Yep. Yep. So every message I get back is about what I've done to her
Yep.
and what I've done to mom and what I've done to Jehovah. And then my daughter, who is she's a teenager now, my sister would still text her and send her pictures of them when they were at the Kingdom Hall together and ask her how she's doing, tell her she misses her. And then my daughter got enough of it one day, and I was super proud of her because she was able to express her feelings. And she did it as respectfully as she could through text message, but she pretty much told my sister, she said, "Don't do that." And she was like, "What do you mean?" And she said, "Don't pretend like everything's okay with us when you don't talk to my mom. That's not healthy." And she said, "Well, your mom lied to me. She left Jehovah." And my daughter said, "She didn't tell you. She didn't lie. She didn't tell you because she knew what would happen." And that's exactly what happened. And I'm like, I'm so proud of her because she's speaking truth, and my adult sister cannot see it.
She is speaking truth. But my God, what horrible boundaries for your adult sister to be talking trash about you to
Mhm.
your daughter. Again, it shows who Jehovah's Witnesses are, and nobody can make you shun. Shunning is an action. I saw one of my younger brothers at a concert, and I walked up to him, "Hey, how's it going, man?" And he shunned me to my face. He did that. I didn't shun him, just like you told your sister. I'm the same person. My door's open. I hope we could be cool. And she's the one choosing that as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. She can't blame you. That's completely unfair.
Right. Yeah, and then but in those same messages, she had the nerve to tell my daughter that, "I can't believe your mom must have told you." that I'm not talking to her now. So like she turns it back on us, and I'm like,
Oh,
why?
wow.
So when my daughter finds out that you're visiting, you're in town, you're like a whole flight away, and you're here, and you didn't want to see her. You don't expect me to explain that to her. I'm not going to lie to her. So yeah, she knows that you don't talk to me, and she knows why. And she's smart enough to get the whole picture. So, I haven't seen the last time I saw them, my sister, her husband, and my niece, we went camping. Oh, it was terrible. I drove like 5 hours to meet them, and um, slept on the couch of this spider filled cabin. Oh my God. It, this is deep in the woods somewhere. But it was so awkward because none of them were themselves. They were so uncomfortable around me because I wasn't going to meetings anymore. So nobody wanted to talk. My sister avoided me, and I ended up leaving early. I drove in that morning and left the next morning because I was uncomfortable. I was like, there's no point in this. But before I left, I told my niece, I said, I love you so much. I said, I know things seem different, but this is what I want you to remember is that I am always here for you. I don't care what you do, what your mom and them think of you. If you ever need something, I am here for you. And I've told her that again since then. I really hope that she remembers that, because I feel like one day she'll reach an age where she'll start to question something, and she'll think of me, or maybe she'll dig into why she doesn't have me in her life anymore, and something will come of that. But I do miss that child. We would go visit, and she would run past my daughter. They're the same age, to hug me first because I was her favorite person. And I do miss her. My mom, we don't we don't talk. Like I said, I was removed from the group chat. So she calls her family group chat with them chickies, because we were always her little chickies, but I'm not in it. So even when there's a death in the family, ironically, last week I saw my phone glow and it said mom. And I told my coworker, I said, oh, my mom texted me, someone must have died. And I opened the message and she told me my great uncle had died. And I was like, see? And they laughed, but it's true, because she doesn't just call me or text me or, hey, come over, or can I see the kids? It's me making an effort and hoping she doesn't say no. And she'll let me come over so that she can see the grandkids. I went over there in November because I found out that three people from her congregation had moved into her house. And two of them I know, they used to work with me at the construction company, and they're both ex-addicts, which are always addicts, and they had converted to the religion. And just, I know them, and I know what kind of people they are. And my mom's vulnerable, and her and my stepdad have had a lot of health problems. And I'm like, why are these grown men living in my mom's house? So I went over there and tried to talk to my mom about it. And she was so rude to me and basically said, you do what you want to do, and I'm going to do what I want to do. And I said, fair enough, but you do understand that they are drug addicts and they have no plan for getting out of your house. And one is a convicted child sex abuser who is not registered to live here. Oh my God. She's like, well, he didn't know, and she looked older. And I'm like, do you hear yourself? And I told her, I was like, if you're not going to tell the police he's living here, then I feel like I should, because your neighbors deserve to know that this person's living here. I don't care if he's a witness or not. And then when they came home from work, I was still there, and I had a very difficult conversation with this guy. I'm like, you may not understand why I'm here, but I don't understand why three grown adults are living with my mom and she is taking care of you. Like, this is wrong. And, they tiptoed around it and whatever. And I just straight up said, does the parish, do the authorities know that you live here? And he said, well, yeah. I've told my officer. I said, told him what? Well, they know that I've been moving around, hopping around a little bit, but I'm registered. I said, are you registered here at this address? And he said, well, no. I said, so if I call right now and talk to the sheriff's office and ask if they know that so and so lives at this address, what would happen? And he said, well, they probably take me to jail. And I'm looking at my mom like, do you freaking hear this? He has been lying to you. He is not registered to live here. It's legal. It's illegal to have him in your house unregistered. Y'all refuse to do it because you don't want to be embarrassed that your address is put out there. But yet you tell the elders that I'm living with my partner and I asked you not to tell anyone. And now you're asking me not to tell the police a legal matter. And at that point, I was like, I don't even recognize this woman. I don't understand what she's doing. And they still live with her. It's been like,
Well,
I've
she's
been
an
there since
addict too.
August. Yeah, they're codependent and
Well,
she
she's
feels like she's
addicted to the
taking care.
witnesses.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, when I was questioning him, his mom's sitting there and she says, he's not a liar. He's one of Jehovah's Witnesses. And that was before I actually got the truth out of him. But I'm like, it doesn't matter who you are or what you are now. This is something that you've done that you have to live with for the rest of your life, which is why you should really be careful and think like an adult whenever you're making choices like that, you know? And I told my mom, I was like, think about this guy was like 25 years old messing with a kid that was under 18. He knew what he was doing. It does not excuse, nothing excuses that. Nothing. But you're excusing it and it's okay because you're embarrassed to register your address. Well, then just make him move out. I dropped the issue and I haven't been talking to them. I haven't pushed it only out of respect for my stepdad. He's, like 81 and he has health problems. And I don't know. I let it go, but I know I shouldn't. And there's something that should be done with that
He should be.
information.
He should be. That individual should be outed for sure.
The elders also know that he's there and that he's not
We know
registered,
that
which,
that doesn't matter.
and I know they don't care. And it's
Well,
just really
somebody has to.
disappointing that my mother, whose daughter this same thing happened to, an older guy, and then my sister paid for it. And then here's this guy, he's bumming off you living in your house and did the same thing to another girl, just like happened to your daughter, and you're okay with this. Like, what the fuck? It's crazy. And
It, there are
but you're
people.
worried about who I'm living with.
There are people who sit in the same congregation with their child's abuser, and as long as they're Jehovah's
Yeah.
Witnesses, they don't care. Jehovah's Witnesses love Jehovah's Witnesses. They don't care about anything else. They
Yeah.
don't. This is their addiction. They will do whatever they can for the truth, for
Mm-hmm.
Jehovah. They will sell out their own kids for their next fix. They will go on vacation and have to get a hit. It's all about the organization and the cult. And they will sacrifice anyone and anything, children, vulnerable people. It doesn't matter. If you're one of Jehovah's Witnesses, we're boys. If you're
Mm-hmm.
not, we're not at all. Like, it's just they don't care about people. They care about affiliation with a cult. That's what they care about.
Yeah. I think
Jehovah's Witnesses don't care about people.
I know, and my dad, losing my dad is so devastating, but he truly loved us unconditionally.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he
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 cared
had
about
his
people.
struggles, but no matter what choice we made in life, he was there, even if he disagreed with it.
Sure.
He was at my wedding, which he disagreed with. Um, and he never showed partiality to me for my choices, even when I made mistakes. And then my mom, on the other hand, if I'm not her version of me,
Mm-hmm.
then it doesn't count. And I'm just a constant disappointment. And, I've spent my whole life trying not to disappoint her. Is why I was always an overachiever and didn't get in trouble, is because I didn't want to hurt my mom. And so I tried to say this to her. I don't know if she truly heard it, but her and my sister, for me to make such a huge choice to leave something that I was so deep into and deeply believed in and spent my entire life being, for me to walk away from that, you had to know that I really thought about it and I really considered everything because I knew what the stakes were.
Of course.
But they don't, it's like they don't show any validation toward that.
Well,
I'm
they
just
can't
wrong.
see that. No, no, you're wrong. They're
Yeah.
narcissists. They're in a narcissistic organization. You will never make a narcissist happy. You will never be
No.
enough for a narcissist because a narcissist can only love someone who is just like them. Just like the old Greek myth of Narcissus, he falls in love with his own reflection in the pool, and he falls in and drowns in his own reflection. Jehovah's Witnesses are in love with their own reflection, and if you can't reflect back to them who they are, then they have no use for you. None at
Yeah.
all. When you're in those judicial committees, there's no compassion, there's no empathy. They're not caring why you got there. It's, are you going to come back and look like us and think like us and be like us or not? And if the answer is no, then get out.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
can't see. They are so busy fawning over their own reflection that they can't see anybody else outside of that. They are blind. They can't see it. No matter how much we want them to, they just can't. They're not even malicious about it. They are just blind.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's a
And
narcissistic organization.
I'm so glad that so my dad passed when I was 33, and that's young to lose your parent, but
Mhm.
I know what unconditional love is because of him, and I've told my mom, there is nothing that my children could do that would make me leave them, and for her yeah, just the complete, like, turning their back and being comfortable with the shunning is like, y'all don't have any empathy, you have no heart. And then you want to make it about you and your pain, what I've done to you. It's not about that. Just accept it and move on. Like I've had to accept that this is how it is. I don't agree with it. I hate it, but I've accepted it. And that took me, it's hard to do. But I can't live in that state of um, hoping that things change because you waste time doing that and you only have so much time. So I'm
You can't
focused
change
on,
other people.
nope, you can't. And I focused on my kids and trying to have fun and a good life and
Mhm.
set goals for myself. And when mom and middle sister want to pop in and see how we are or whatever, I'll respond. I don't make a point to try too much because um I don't want the hurt that comes with that. But I have enough. I've replaced them. I've replaced them with other people, and I get the love and the support and um, the strength that I need from them, and that's chosen family. And my cousins actually that I've gotten closer to, and like, hey, don't remember me? We weren't close, but we could be now. And cousins are supposed to be your first friends. They're great people. And my baby sister, we have a really good relationship. So anyway, yeah, it's been a crazy ride.
I'm sure it has. I will be remiss if I don't say this, so I have to. Just because I know that Jehovah's Witnesses and Jehovah's Witness families around your own kiddos at times or can reach out or whatever. Um, it's important to realize sometimes that Jehovah's Witnesses are like religious predators.
Yeah.
And they see everyone as someone to be attained, an object to be attained, and they like to win people. And so just be careful with your kids and them. Again, it's not to say that your witness family they mean well,
Mhm.
they have good intentions, but how good has Jehovah's Witnesses been for your family so far?
Right.
And
And
they will bring that in, they will do anything they can, and I know
oh,
people
yeah.
who have them reaching through FaceTimes and all kinds of things, like, but surreptitiously trying to convert people's kids, and I know people whose kids they've taken, and it is scary stuff.
Yeah, over my dead body, I would never I told my daughter, I was like, you can so I am not a religious person. I would classify myself as agnostic atheist, but
Sure.
I'm not offended by other people that wanna be.
Sure.
And my daughter she reads her Bible every night, and she writes in a journal, and she prays, and my mom, when I told her that I was pregnant, her one of her responses was, "Well, maybe," she looked at my daughter and she said, "Well, maybe your mama will let me study with you and your little sibling." And I said, "No." And so, you know, when I was at her house a few months ago, I shamed her. I said, "Mom, Granny, her mom, lived 4 hours, and I was closer to Granny than you are to my child or my children. You don't come visit, you don't do things with them, and I don't understand why. Like, I can't, not that I can't wait to have grandkids one day, but that's supposed to be fun. You
It
spoil
is,
them,
but
you
I'm
send them
glad she's
home."
not close to your kids.
I know. I mean, I feel like the more time she would spend with us, the less witness she would want to be. And she's even told me that her relationship with Jehovah and her spirituality is very weak because of me. So it's my
Oh,
fault. Oh, I am not kidding. I was like,
that's
well,
BS. That's
maybe
her
you should work on
trying to
that.
blame you and make you feel guilty.
Yeah, she just doesn't want to do it.
Manipulation.
Even when she was disfellowshipped, she made comments to my cousin that maybe it wasn't the truth because of the way they were treating her. I'm like, no kidding. But you want to, and I told her, I said, the only thing that you do text her, my daughter, is Caleb and Sophia videos. She's almost 14 years old. She doesn't care about that, and she doesn't want to talk about that. That is not her life. And the last time we were there, which was last month or so, my daughter's in band and she had tried out for honor band, which was right next to my mom's house. So we went over after, and mom was like, "So what you doing this weekend?" And my daughter says, "I'm going to a birthday dinner." And I was like, "Oh." And it was just normal for her to say because that's what we do.
Mhm.
And my mom was like, "Oh, did you get her a present? Did you get your friend a present?" And I was like, "Yeah, we have to do that." I don't go into what I participate in with my mom. I just like mentally pretend like she doesn't know I do anything,
Mm.
even though I'm sure she knows. I just don't want to have the conversation. But my daughter just put it out there, and mom was like, "Well, if you're going to be pagan, you might as well do it right and get her a present." And I was like, "Okay, we'll do that."
Hmm.
But she just is, the times we are around her, I'm there and everyone's uncomfortable. But in the back of my mind, I want to believe that when she sees her grandchildren and how happy we are, she has some comfort in knowing that we're okay and that I'm not hurting her as much as I think I am, which is
You're
a
not
real big
hurting
cue.
her at all.
I know that she's hurting herself,
There you
but
go.
I carry that, and I know I need to work through that and plan on it, and I am slowly,
We've
but
made you
that's
feel
just,
responsible for everybody else's feelings.
yeah, which is why I didn't have my own feelings until I was in my 30s.
Thou shalt not stumble others, or thou shalt be blood guilty. You are
Mhm.
responsible for the thoughts and feelings of everyone else, especially your parents. And that all comes from being in a narcissistic environment as well. But I just hope that you you can continue, on your path of growth, and at the end of the day, you're responsible for you, not them. And as you continue to grow, y- you know, be the example, be the person, the healthiest version of you, and that will be attractive to people who are looking for something better, and that will be repulsive to those who think they've got the best already.
Yeah. That's what I'm striving for. Um,
That's the only thing
I
you can control.
yeah, I went through a
Yeah.
little bit of therapy, and the biggest thing that she talked to me about was just acceptance for myself and accepting others and where they are, and that's just where my mom is, and I've accepted it, and I have a really good life.
Good. What do
Um,
you love about your life today? What's good about your life and your kiddos' lives today?
my oldest daughter is so beautiful, and she's got this really great group of friends that she's close to, very respectful girls. So I like having them around for her, and she's into music. She spends time with her dad, even though we're not together anymore. He and I have a better relationship than expected, so that's nice. I have a crazy, almost 2-year old who is something else. She looks just like me, but she acts like her daddy, and he's a troublemaker. So that's fun. I work uh, for a florist, so I'm in the horticulture business, and that's something I never imagined I would be in. Um, but I love it, and being accepted by these people. So I worked for witnesses, right, for all these years, and then I left there and I went to work for this other company. And it was a huge adjustment, but it's super cool to have people that don't judge you. And you don't have to go into work wondering if they're going to ask you why you weren't at the meeting last night. And so
That's a beautiful thing, but such a low bar for life.
I know,
I just want people to not judge me.
I
I
know.
think that's beautiful that you found accepting people who just like you for
Yeah.
you. That's what we should all have in our lives.
Yeah. And even the house I'm in right now doing this video is a dear friend that I made working there. And she
Awesome.
doesn't work with me anymore, but we're best friends. And she's like an aunt to my kids. Um, and so that is I have a great job. I have a great partner. He's very supportive. He's very much his own individual and person, and we're not married, and we don't I mean, we think about it, but we don't really care about that part of it. Like, we love each other. Why get the government involved? That's not necessary. But he's just very different than what I kind of was raised to be with, and helps around the house and cooks and does great things that make a wonderful partner. Probably very basic stuff, but great for me, supportive. And then I have some goals this year, learning how to do some crafty things. When you have kids, you kind of lose yourself a little bit, and you are limited in things that you can do because you have this little monster following you around that gets into everything. So I've kind of put off some things I wanted to do as far as remodeling my house and gardening, and I feel like she's getting to an age where those things can happen now. And yeah, just continuing to grow. I like to read all kinds of things, and you know,
Enjoying life.
yeah, just
Yeah.
being normal and not worrying about other people's expectations, not worrying about if I'm doing enough or if I am enough, and accepting that I am more than enough, and I'm good with that. I'm satisfied with that. And as long as I continue to grow as a person, as a human, then I think I'm doing all right.
Isn't that cool that you can both live in acceptance and still want to grow? Acceptance
Mhm.
doesn't mean that you have no desire to grow anymore. That's well, hopefully life is a lifelong process of growth to some degree, but you can also still let go of the hope that things could have been different,
Yeah.
and try to accept um, who we've been, accepting ourselves at times for who we've been. In all these situations, most people are trying and they're giving what they've got in life.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, some are not giving enough,
Mhm.
enough for healthy relationships or whatever the case may be. But I'm glad that I just wish you well on your process of growth and trying to and just loving yourself well, because that's one of the key things that we were all prevented from doing was we were taught to see ourselves through the eyes of others and not our own. And we can be the support for ourselves, and we can be that solid base. And ultimately, we don't really need those other individuals. It's nice to have people in our lives for sure, but starting from within is a beautiful place. We just weren't taught to do so. We were
Yeah.
taught to worry what everyone else thinks. Back to the whole appearances thing, right?
Mhm. Yeah, and you
Yeah.
have certain, rules, that people make up, and just because they're blood, they're your family, and blood's thicker than water, and that's just not true. It's just
No,
really
it's
not
not.
true. It doesn't have to be that way. It's nice if it is, and it's nice for those
Mhm.
people that have that, but not everybody does.
Nope,
And that's
and
okay
I'll agree with
too,
that.
and you can break cycles. When you have the opportunity to do that, you should take advantage of it and break that cycle and do something that's healthier for yourself and your future generations. And one day, if you happen to have kids like I do, and they grow up and see what a great mom they had and all these fun memories that we made together, then they look back and say they had a great life too. And that's kind of my purpose right now, for the time being. And yeah, they're pretty awesome. My two girls.
I think that is the place to leave this. I think that is the way to end the interview. I'm so happy that you have those. Well, the one's a little monster, I guess. I'm glad that you have them in your lives, that they get to have you as well. That's a beautiful thing. And you get to change the narrative and change the experience, change what it is to be a mom in your family and to show unconditional love.
Yes. Thank you.